Just stand up. What's up, everybody? This is the Just Stand Up podcast. This is AJ. Like always, I'm here with Aaron, and I guess we're going to recap the fights that we had over this last week and have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, sounds good. And I do want to mention that we were talking before we started recording. You said that you're getting a little bit of anxiety. Your stomach was bothering you again. I mentioned that I was a little bit sleepy. And I've had numerous health problems over the years, and I frequently have trouble sleeping. But listeners, don't fear. I promise you that like 30% Kamaru Usman, we will rise to the challenge, just like Usman in his Woodley title fight. And despite having, I can't remember the crazy amount of things he said he was wrong with him. He said he was fighting with a hernia and like torn labrums in both of his shoulders. I mean, the way he described,
sounded like he'd been in a car accident.
Yeah, like they would have to wheel him out in a chair. And he said once he gets in that octagon, just all the pain disappears and he can suddenly move again, and he's an unstoppable fighting force. And like Kamaru Usman, despite our physical limitations right now, we'll rise to the challenge of this podcast and smash it in the face. So I'm ready to go. That was a little pep talk more to myself than anything. But don't worry, viewers, you're in for a good one.
Oh goodness, everybody likes a little pep talk right at the beginning of the podcast that they're listening to. Hopefully that'll inspire them to go own the day while they're at their job tomorrow while they're listening to this.
Yeah.
Or maybe it'll just make them hate us. Who knows?
Basically, to summarize that, it's never as bad as you think it is, and you can push through a lot more than you think you can. And that is exactly what we're gonna do. So do you wanna just jump right into the Bellator? I mean, we can probably cover that pretty quickly since I think neither of us watched at the point where we can give detailed analysis or anything.
Yeah, I didn't watch either cards live. I was a little busy with a movie date, but I caught a lot of the highlights. I watched a little bit of the replays today. Bellator, it was a good card. It was a quick card. Just a few fights that I'm sure people care about. Jack Swagger fought Kung Fu Panda. I don't remember. I know his nickname was Tombstone. Bellator does a fantastic job just finding like the funniest fighters to fight who they want to hype up. I remember now. TJ Jones. He had like one of the widest names ever. TJ Tombstone Jones fought Jack Swagger. I think it was like another 2-minute head and arm choke by Swagger. The highlight of that fight was Swagger. I know his real name's Hager, but I can't help it. He's Jack Swagger to me. He held the choke for a good 8 seconds too long. I think Mike Beltran was the ref, and he was literally trying to rip him off and still couldn't get him off. Probably should have got DQ'd. No reason to do Kung Fu Panda that dirty. But I guess he continues on to now 2-0 in Bellator, 2-0 as a pro. There's not really anything good to say about that until he starts fighting guys with a little bit more experience. There's nothing to brag about.
So first, I'm assuming his nickname was Tombstone because his doctor looked at his health report and was like, "Dude, you're gonna be dead soon if you keep this up." And he's like, "Oh, that sounds good, Tombstone. I like that." And as far as him holding onto the choke, I don't. It wasn't 8 seconds. That was a little bit of an exaggeration. It was. He had the choke in. Beltran tapped his arm and he didn't let go. And then on the second time Beltran tapped, then he let go. And I heard him say,
it looked like he was tugging it. It looked like Beltran was actually putting an effort because he yelled at Swagger after he finally let it
go. Oh yeah, Beltran was pissed off, understandably so. But what Swagger, it was tough because I think Jake Hager, I'll call him by his real name, was still trying to stay in character a little bit for some reason. And from what he said, he's like, I thought it was Kung Fu Panda, as you call him, tugging. I didn't realize it was the ref, but he didn't want to apologize. He was still trying to act like a heel to get the crowd into it. So whatever. I think that was
the kayfabe, as they call it.
Yeah, it was. This was not nearly to Husmar Paharis level because it was also a choke. He wasn't ripping apart someone's tendons and ligaments. So
yeah,
I didn't get that worked up about it. So next fight that I'm sure everyone wants to hear commentary on is MVP Daly. Thoughts?
I cannot express the joy it brought to me when I was sitting there watching this movie, and then I get 20 texts in 3 minutes talking about how MVP's head got almost bounced off the canvas with some hammer fist after the way they were describing it, the knockout to me. I was a little confused, but it was what did Lima do? He caught him with a leg kick, which if people don't know, Douglas Lima is a fantastic striker. He's one of the best welterweights in the world. If you just don't watch Bellator, you just don't know about him. He is tremendous, and he has some of the best Muay Thai in the welterweight division, possibly in between the UFC and Bellator, definitely in Bellator. And he caught one of the heaviest leg kicks I've ever seen someone throw on MVP, turned him sideways like a cartoon, and then as MVP tried to spring back up, just uppercut from hell, and it was violent sleeps all day.
So it wasn't even that the leg kick was that heavy. It's that he timed it perfectly. MVP had just tried to do one of these. It almost looks like a Superman punch, but was like a little bit more reckless and off balance, where MVP starts from way far away and kind of launches himself, and he has
that karate back and forth stuff.
Yeah, but his torso and center of gravity is like way, way far forward. So when Lima landed the leg kick, MVP was completely off the ground. He had nothing in contact with the ground, and his center of gravity was completely unbalanced to begin with. And then with that, I mean, it actually doesn't take that much force to kind of redirect him. So Lima landed that leg kick just with perfect timing, and because he'd seen him do it just, I don't know, it was probably like 20 seconds before, times it perfectly, and just cuts the legs right out from under him. And then, yes, when MVP lands on the canvas, instead of rolling to his back or trying to be a little bit more defensive, he was probably worried about getting stuck on the mat, so he tries to stand right back up. And yeah, Lima was 110% ready for that.
It was glorious. It was my favorite KO of the weekend, possibly my favorite KO of the month. I know we're only halfway through, but that was tremendous. It's my favorite knockout right now. The MVP hype train, Bellator does a good job of hyping up their little marketing schemes, and like people are comparing him to Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, and every time you tell them like, hey guys, you might want to chill on that, they're like, no, just look at these knockouts. Like, he hasn't been fighting the greatest. The best guy he's fought is probably a past his prime. Help me here. Paul Daly. There we go. Sorry. In the opening round of the Grand Prix. And even that, I'm pretty sure it just turned into an awkward wrestling match between two guys who can't wrestle very well. And people are acting like he was God's gift to fighting. So it's always fun seeing an undeserved hype train crash.
Well, and what I was interested to see in this fight was, did MVP have, underneath all the flashy stuff and the weird techno dancing and popping and locking, did MVP actually have the fundamentals in his technique to pull all that stuff off against a higher caliber fighter? Because that's the thing. Yes, does Israel Adesanya do some flashy, exciting stuff? Absolutely. Same with Anderson Silva. But at the base of everything they're doing is good technique. So they're setting those flashy moves up. They're doing them at times when they can safely execute them. They're not going in for big crazy spinning techniques when their opponents have their feet set in an angle where they can counter them, right? And to this point, MVP hasn't fought anyone who could really pull off a counter if he doesn't set things up and doesn't use good fundamental technique. So I was like, all right, is he going to be smart enough to not do stupid shit when Lima can clock him? And it was a resounding no. You didn't see the whole fight, but he actually landed a good shot on Lima in that second round and had Lima
right knockout, right?
Yeah, exactly. He had Lima slightly wobbled. I mean, and I say slightly. I mean, I think it might have been for all of 2 seconds where Lima was.
I feel like I saw that part. I thought when I saw it initially, I was like, oh shit, that's bad. I rewatched it, and it seemed almost like when the shot landed, Lima was almost a little off balance when it landed.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it wasn't, okay, he stunned him for like 2 seconds at most. But even that 2 seconds later, Lima was good to go, and 3 seconds later, MVP was taking a nap.
And yeah, but as soon as MVP landed that one shot, I swear, in his mind, he was like, oh, I'm invincible. I can just do all the stupid stuff I normally do with no setups and technique to the wind, and I'm going to do, my quote-unquote video game moves and look like a hero. And as we saw, that didn't work out for him. Contrast that to Israel Adesanya, who people keep trying to compare. How many times have we seen Izzy land a huge shot, but then just patiently work his way in, continue to pick his guy apart, not go crazy. I mean, that in of itself.
So often people get mad at him.
Yeah, it's night and day, right? And Adesanya is much younger. I mean, in theory, he should be a little bit more reckless, and he's just not. So I think with this last bit of information, for the love of God, just let this comparison die. They're not the same fighter. Israel Adesanya has better technique. He's a smarter fighter. I mean, his IQ, his fight IQ is, I think, 200 or 300 points higher than MVP's. Stop the comparison. It's dumb. That's all I got to say about that.
That sounds about right. The last fight people would care about from Bellator 221, their main event, the potential champ fight, turned out successful for featherweight champion. What is the little one? I know one's Patricio, one's Patricky. I think Patricky's the 145er.
He fought Patricio.
I hate Patricio's the little one.
I only know that because I'm looking at the Wikipedia of the card.
Okay. I just describe him as big Pitbull, little Pitbull. So in my head, that's how it always is. Even when I wrote down my notes for the podcast, I just write little Pitbull. I forget to actually look at the first name. Chandler, his best highlight of his career is knocking out the 155 Pitbull, whichever one that is. Going into this fight, after he did knock out the older brother, he did jump on the cage. He was celebrating. He was yelling at the younger brother. So it was a little bit of a grudge match in the making for people who don't keep up with Bellator. So Chandler's their 155 champ. He's fighting the 145. It's yet another smaller fighter in the champ scenario winning. I feel like if we looked at the statistics, it's leaning that way heavily quite often. The lighter weight champion coming up and taking the belt. And I want to say when I was checking on Twitter right before this started, he said he wants to fight Canelo or some shit now. I guess because the DAZN connection, that Bellator's on DAZN, and Canelo fights for DAZN now, I guess. And that sounds just like an absolutely horrible idea. I guess now that he has the champ thing, he's trying to just be the Brazilian Conor McGregor.
Wow. No.
It hurts your brain to think about, doesn't it?
I'm trying to process this, and there's just smoke coming out of my ears, little short circuits happening all across my brain. That's nice that he said that. You could say that he wants to fight that he wants to fight Daniel Cormier on the dark side of the moon in a pay-per-view match for $1 billion sheiks, and that they're going to be sponsored by fairies and gold dust. That's wonderful. You can say whatever you want. It's not going to happen. And as far as the smaller fighter winning, yeah, if it's not a grappling heavy match, the smaller fighter has an advantage. I mean, that's the crazy part. Every time I see these big strikers cutting all this weight to be in a lower weight class, I just hurts my brain because it's not an advantage. Being faster and more accurate is a huge advantage for a striker, and we've seen it so many times now. Someone who's maybe struggling a little bit, going up a weight class, all of a sudden the guys are a little bit slower. It's easier for them to land. They've got a speed advantage and they do great. Like at this point, it shouldn't be a surprise, but people keep getting surprised by it.
We'll let them, because at this point, if you're a betting man, just bet on the smaller fighter in the champ fights. It's becoming extremely predictable. So there was some good fights from Bellator. Going into this weekend, I cared more about that card than the UFC card, and I was planning on watching that until my plans got changed. So overall, Bellator, they put on a good card. They contend with UFC on some weekends. I know there's just this bias against Bellator. Everybody just doesn't care about the B League in their mind, but they put on some really quality fights. People really need to be watching them. I know the DAZN is a little bit of an issue now that they bumped their price up to $20 a month, and those welterweight Grand Prix fights are only on there. But if you're a boxing fan as well, DAZN is a good little bargain to get.
All right, so I mean that about wraps up Bellator. Let's just touch on the top 3 fights in UFC. Those are the ones that I watched. Definitely, I think the ones that most people were interested in. The one kind of question that not even question, like thought that I heard a lot of people expressing after UFC was over was that Volkanovski should have tried to do more against Aldo. So just for context, I mean, a lot of people do remember that. Aldo got that quick KO loss against Conor. That Max has stopped him twice, but other than that, he's still been a world beater. I mean, he was struggling against Jeremy Stevens. It looked like Jeremy Stevens had him in trouble, and then just delivered a body punch from hell and crumpled Stevens and won it right there. And then he made Moicano look like an amateur. I mean, Moicano was hyped. Oh, this is the passing the torch, the next great Brazilian striker. And Aldo was like, yeah, slow your roll on that. I'm gonna
Not time yet.
Yeah, I'm gonna show you that there's levels to this thing. I'm gonna not even big brother you. I'm gonna dad you. You're a little kid, and I'm gonna discipline you for getting a little too uppity. And so when I heard people saying, hey, Volkanovski should have tried to do more against Aldo, like I was highly confused. I mean, did you have any thoughts on that?
Again, I didn't get to watch the fight, but just off of knowing how Jose's performed, if you take out the Max Conner fight, he's still the destroyer. He's I don't understand. Like you said, I don't understand how people can just be like, oh, just go knock him out. It is not that easy to just go put a statement on Jose Aldo, even in 2019. If you step in the cage with him, you're in for a long night, period. So Volkanovski is what? How many fights has he had in the UFC? Like 5 or 6 or something? He's relatively new on the scene. He's already fighting Jose fucking Aldo in Brazil. Let him just have his unanimous decision and be happy. He's probably close to the #1 contender now. I see people, mostly the people, I see Frankie Edgar's camp arguing he should get the next title shot, which I don't really agree with. But as far as resumes go, Volkanovski is jumping up the rankings quick. Then he just fought Chad Mendes before this. Now he fights Jose Aldo. He's got wins over everybody so far. He's got a good argument for if Max is looking for a new opponent. I would place him above Frankie Edgar. So if you don't like his victory over Jose, tough. That's going to be a hard fight to win, no matter what time of the year it is. So I mean, I don't have a lot of educated things to say on it. I guess it's more just that babbling.
Oh, I can say educated things. You want me to? I can. Let me try to jump in.
You actually watched the fight?
I watched the fight, and also here's the other thing. Aldo has made a career out of destroying short, stocky wrestle boxers, right? And that's basically what Volkanovski is. I mean, he's Australian based, right? Or is it New Zealand?
He's out of City Kickboxing with Izzy and Dan Hooker.
He's not that different from a lot of fighters that Aldo has just torn through, a la Chad Mendes, Frankie Edgar. I mean, like top quality fights. But when Aldo can work from range, he's got a height advantage. He can kind of slow the pace. It's just tough. Like nobody who has a stylistic matchup like Volkanovski has ever beaten Aldo. So going into it, I actually pretty heavily favored Aldo, and I was like, man, if Volkanovski wins this, 1, he's the real deal, and 2, I want to see what he does differently than everyone else. And the answer, what he did differently, was he just took the most unflashy, least glamorous approach, and it worked out, right? So instead of headhunting and trying to knock out Aldo, he was very content to throw a bunch of leg kicks. I mean, Volkanovski actually threw more leg kicks than Aldo did. He was happy to just work the body. He tried to set up some headshots. He went for some knockout punches, but instead of just solely focusing on that, plenty of body shots to go along with the leg kicks. And then there were also long periods of time where he was happy to just press Aldo up against the cage and just keep him there and just work some knees in and score points. And Aldo rarely had good opportunities to land that big, flashy technique or big strike. I mean, if you guys remember against Chad Mendes, I think it was their first fight. Mendes was doing really well, and then Aldo just was able to spin off from the cage and just deliver a hellacious knee to the head and KO him. And it's like at any point in a match, especially a 3-round fight with Aldo, that's a possibility. And Volkanovski just never really gave him the shot to land that big technique. So that was what I heard. I was like, yeah, I guess he could have tried to do more, and then he could have also just got knocked out.
Yeah, I don't have much educated. I'm happy for him. I like that whole City Kickboxing team. They do well. It's interesting to see new blood get brought up quickly. We thought it was going to be Moicano. Jose stopped that. We thought it was going to be Brian Ortega. Max stopped that. I mean, granted, they're still in the top 5, top 8, but it's exciting now that those two have chilled. That we had Volkanovski kind of sneak his way up into the top rankings and be in title contention now.
Yeah. Well, and rumors are that Ortega is going to take a fight pretty soon. I think they were saying at 240 maybe.
With Zabit.
Exactly, which would be a crazy fight. Love to see that, and it's not a bad comeback fight for Ortega. So I think worst case scenario, if the UFC does for worst case scenario for Volkanovski, anyways, is if the UFC does go with Frankie Edgar, which at this point would you be even tiniest bit shocked?
I said this on my Q&A yesterday. Literally nothing the UFC does surprises me anymore. They could sign Vince McMahon to fight Dana White in the main event of International Fight Week, and I would just be like, yeah, that sounds about right.
I would pay money to see that too. But the other part, I wouldn't even be upset if they give it to Frankie Edgar. Because if you remember, Frankie was supposed to have a title fight with Max. Max had to pull out. And then that's when Frankie Edgar ended up fighting Ortega and getting uppercut like 7 feet off the canvas. So
I have the bobblehead from MMA bobblehead. I'm actually looking at it as we're talking.
Poor Frankie. That was the only time where I just felt sorry for Frankie. It was like, I felt like I was seeing like a small kid just get worked by their dad. I know. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the man and the legend that is Frankie Edgar, but I was like, no, poor little Frankie. Oh. So yeah, he was supposed to have that title shot, and he was being a good company man, and he took a dangerous fight on short notice and lost. So you know what? If he gets that shot, fine. But Volkanovski could also just wait and still get a title shot after that if he wants to. So
the risk of that is the winner. I guarantee if Zabit beats Ortega, the UFC is gonna give him a title shot. They want him fighting for a title.
Maybe
they're trying to build up.
I think
even if he can barely speak English or he has problems translating to most audiences, just his fight style alone, the UFC just wants to be able to market off of that.
I guess what I'm trying to say, though, is there are many good paths to a title shot after beating Jose Aldo 30-27. And when you're in a cage match with a incredibly, incredibly dangerous fighter who could literally change the rest of your life with one strike, you know, one of those crazy kicks to the head, and Volkanovski might not ever be the same for the rest of his life. Like, maybe don't F around and just get the job done the most efficiently way, as efficiently as possible.
Fan cheers are cool, but your win bonus is a lot cooler. I don't think any of the fans who are booing you for taking the safe way out are going to be sending you any money if you had taken the dangerous way and got knocked out. So I've always been team get your paycheck, get the win over anything else.
All right. And then there was Anderson Silva versus Jared Cannonier. I guess the recap, if you didn't see that fight, was Anderson Silva looked kind of old, which he's been looking for several years now. And up to this point, I've been saying, well, he's not taking a lot of damage. And then Jared Cannonier had a brutal inside leg kick, and Anderson Silva's leg exploded, and he fell down, and that was the end of the fight. I think that brings up the same question that we had before: is Silva done? Like, should he retire? I mean, he can't. He obviously he can't cut it even at the kind of the mid range at this point. So what do you think? What's the path for Silva forward?
Obviously, he should retire. Is he going to retire? No, I'm pretty sure they were talking about. I think it was John Anik on Twitter. It was someone within the UFC organization, or maybe Brett Okamoto. I can't remember who was tweeting it. It was one of those two probably. That he was in discussion for a contract extension before this fight. Like, you remember back in 2012 when they announced he had a 10-fight extension, and we were all like, Anderson, you're like 35, 36, something around this time. You just signed a 10-fight deal, and he's fought it out, and he shows no sign of really wanting to stop. So should he retire? Absolutely. Is he? No. Let's be real. He's more than happy to come in, just fight. Before this fight, you could say, oh, yeah, he'll probably work, the unranked guys or like the bottom 15 guys. Well, Now we can't really even say that, but I'm pretty sure he's one of the highest paid non-champions in the UFC. So I have a bad feeling we're just going to keep seeing Anderson get hurt even after he goes and gets his knee or leg fixed, whatever the injury turns out to be. I saw some people saying they thought it was ACL, MCL. Someone said they thought it was a displaced fracture. I don't remember who that was, but I did read before the podcast started. He's going to go get everything scanned on Monday. Apparently in Brazil where they are, hospitals are batshit crazy during the weekend, and so he made the decision to wait until Monday to go get it checked out. So we'll be able to update people on what that is after he goes and gets it checked out.
Well, the one interesting thing of note, I actually just pulled up a screenshot of when he destroyed his leg versus Weidman. So that leg that basically snapped in two in that fight was his left leg, and this one was his right leg. So now
great. We're taking away his good leg.
Yeah, so there is no good leg at this point. They're both, like tissue paper and duct tape. So,
did you ever see the SpongeBob where the man with the
you could
the glass bones?
You could stop right there. He said, "Did you ever see the SpongeBob?" And you could put literally anything else after that, and the answer would be no.
I always forget you're older than me. You weren't the SpongeBob generation. It was a grand time.
No, not so much. Although you've managed to get me back get me into anime. So now I'm watching things that I probably should have watched when I was, maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. But whatever.
There's no age limit on
the heart wants what the heart wants, I guess. So yeah, that was Anderson Silva. He's like 47 years old. Has zero good legs and is gonna keep fighting until they just won't book him anymore, I guess.
BJ's on 7 losses. How many losses? Anderson's gonna get at least a 10-loss benefit before they cut him.
I don't even get me started on I'm gonna see if I can
I shouldn't have said it.
Pull this whole thing up because what did I say? There was a post about BJ Penn was going to compete. And, I said something to the effect of like, is he going to be competitive though? Because that hasn't happened. And then the comments that you see on Instagram, someone wrote, this is a quote, "Don't knock one of the most original casts of the sport. Be petty somewhere else." So
that's a capital WUT what?
One of the original So first of all, BJ Penn is not one of the original. I think he was trying to say competitors, but he said cast. I don't know what was going through this guy's head. And I tried
English may not have been his first language. It may have been a little bit of a language barrier there.
No, I think it was his first language, and he's just still working on getting a handle on it.
I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
And I said, so are Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie, but they also wouldn't be competitive in the UFC right now. And then, oh, good Lord, can I find it? Because his comment after that, I was just like, I'm going to stop. Spending the mental effort to form complete sentences and respond to this guy is not worth it for either one of us. What did he say? He said, oh yeah, so I pointed out that Ken Shamrock would not be competitive in the UFC right now. And he said, "Yet another founding father of the sport. I'm glad you know your MMA evolution history.
Okay, I'm remembering this now.
Wait, I'm glad you know your MMA evolution history. What you don't know is respect for it." I'm like, bro, all right, I'm done. I'm not being disrespectful. I mean, I actually would gladly be disrespectful to Ken Shamrock in some areas, but look, dude, he's 50 and his skill set doesn't translate and he hasn't evolved. Speaking of evolution, like that's just reality. Like the sport passes people by, they can't compete anymore. BJ Penn's one of them. All right, off the soapbox. I probably shouldn't have even started down this road.
Some MMA fans just don't deserve oxygen sometimes.
Let's talk about somebody who hasn't even reached their prime yet. Is still entering the top of their game and is very possibly going to retire. And that would be, as she's called in Brazil, Josie Tug, Namajunas. I love the fact that they kept calling her Hosey Tug.
That is amazing. Man, I missed out yesterday. Apparently,
That's in all the pre-fight, live events like the weigh-ins and stuff. They're like Hosey Tug. I'm like, that's Hosey Tug. Let's go. And I think that is a testament to just how sweet of a person Rose is. That even the Brazilian fans just weren't booing her or getting on her or giving her "you're gonna die." So they're like, "Oh, it's Rose. We like her. We can't we can't shout 'you're gonna die' at her over and over again. That would make us feel bad." But
she legitimately seems like one of the nicest people in the sport to ever exist. I feel like she probably. I would not bet against her actually crying if she stepped on an ant on the sidewalk feeling so bad. She's just like the nicest person ever. It's a brilliant change of pace from some of the over the top things we have to deal with in MMA personality wise.
she does kind of have that like Buddhist vibe to her, right? Like I could see just Rose just meditating on how to bring peace to the world, like hovering an inch off the floor for hours at a time.
Pat Barry burst in asking her where the dog is. It makes her drop down, hit her tailbone on the ground.
Yeah, I'm exactly actually how I pictured it. To be honest, I mean, okay, so let's go back in time a little bit because you already touched on Pat Barry, and he's obviously so important to Rose's rise to where she is now. But I mean, I think to fully explain what happened in this fight against Jessica Andrade, you have to understand kind of who Rose is, like where she came from, her mental makeup. I mean, so when was the first time you kind of became aware of Rose as a fighter?
I want to say it was one or two fights into Invicta. She had that highlight flying armbar.
Yeah.
I have no idea who it was against, but I remember when was that? Like 2012, 2013, maybe a little later. But I remember that was like when I was close to my peak of just living MMA, just absorbing every ounce of fights I could get. I remember how crazy that was at the time because she's one of the most unassuming little people you'll ever see, and just threw up that tremendous flying armbar, and then her celebration afterwards. And that was the first time I ever noticed her, but that was early on in her pro career too.
So to set the scene, at that point, I think Rose was maybe 19 years old.
That sounds right. 1920 maybe.
The flying arm, I don't even know that fighter. I'm looking it up. It was Kathina Ketron, in Invicta 5 in 2013. So I think she was probably she was 19 or 20 at that point. And when you said her celebration was crazy, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm remembering that celebration or a different Invicta celebration, but the one I remember of the Invicta celebrations is she pulls off this crazy win and then kind of like runs around the octagon with her arms like flapping around like a little kid, and then like falls on the ground, is kind of convulsing, is crying, and then gets back up, is crying more. I mean, if you've ever seen Rose fight or give an interview or step on an ant or anything, like she's definitely a crier. She's very emotional. And you see that fight, and you're like, wow, she's supremely gifted and maybe a little bit unstable, which is definitely a theme that ran through her career. So do you know at that point when she was like 19 or 20, what was she with Pat Barry at this point? Had they become a couple?
As far as I know, she was with Pat Barry before even her first pro fight. Because I'm not 100% confident, but I'm fairly confident Pat was in her corner for that fight, and they had already been dating for a little while.
Okay, so
I'm on Wikipedia. I bet some creepers put it on Wikipedia. Let me read while you're talking. I'll find it.
I'm not that interested in the exact details. I mean, I would not be shocked if Pat Barry waited till like the day that she turned 18 and then asked her out.
If we're being honest, I think it was before she was 18. I want to say like when she started becoming a name, even just coming up through Invicta and then getting signed on for the Ultimate Fighter, I feel like people started doing the math and thought, Pat Barry's like 30. She's maybe 21 getting into the Ultimate Fighter. Some of these numbers for how long they say they're dating aren't adding up.
So regardless, he was definitely a lot older than her when they got together. I mean,
Yeah.
more than I think more than a decade older, and I give him a little bit of a pass because I feel like at that point he was about emotionally 11 years old. So like on an emotional maturity level, they were probably about the same. And we don't really need to go into Pat's whole backstory, but I mean he was definitely a little bit of a wild man. He was talking about even much later down the road when he was with Rose and she was getting established in the UFC. I think this was actually like right before Rose fought Carolina. He got brought in by Brock Lesnar to be a training partner because Brock Lesnar was going to fight Mark Hunt. So he's like, all right, I want a kind of short, stocky, powerful, kickboxer to train with. And Pat Barry got sent home from that training camp because he went out drinking, got drunk, didn't show up for practice, and they're like, all right, just get out of here. We don't have time for you. Brock Lesnar doesn't play games. He just makes angry faces
Gets terrible tattoos.
and holds up entire divisions. Those are his. Brock Lesnar is like hunting and being a hermit in desolate, deserted areas, getting terrible tattoos, and holding up divisions are his three favorite things. He doesn't have time for people not showing up for practice. Um, so yeah, the first time I was really aware of Rose was after that. So she has those Invicta wins. That incredible flying armbar. If you guys have never seen it, just Google or
It's a
YouTube.
12-second fight.
Yeah,
So you have the time.
just search on YouTube Rose Namajunas flying armbar. It is absolutely sick, and the UFC already started kind of billing her as like, oh, this could be the next Ronda Rousey. So you got Rose, a young, I think fair to say emotionally unstable girl at that point, gets brought into the Tough House, and that was the first time I saw her. Did you catch any of that season?
I think I had about one episode, and then I started seeing, oh, they're relying heavily on the drama aspect for the season, and I just checked out. The last tough season I legitimately watched was probably 17.
So okay, so there are a couple of things with that season just to fill in. So as you mentioned, there was a ton of drama. I mean, it was Mean Girls Fighters Edition basically, which I was horrified by because at that point in my life, I was working with college athletes and I was working with a lot of female college athletes and was incredibly frustrated because instead of kind of coaching and working on technique and strength and conditioning training, I was having to navigate drama. And this show comes on, I'm like, oh, this is great. It's going to be female athletes, but they're going to be these badass fighters, and they're going to have that like wrestling mentality of just push through it, and there's going to be none of this bullshit. I'm going to watch to see how like real professional athletes handle themselves, and then it was just petty, ridiculous shit like. I can't remember who it was. I remember it was sort of Felice Herrig and Carlos Esparza were the chief mean girls, and they were acting
Right.
like I'm trying to remember the name of the character, Regina George in the actual Mean Girls movie. They thought they were the hot girls clique, which I don't need to bash those two. I think they've done enough damage to their own reputations. And then there was who was it? It was Tisha Torres and Randa Marcos who were on the other side of things, being like, "Can you just leave us alone? We just want to fight. Like, what is your deal?" Because I remember specifically, there's one episode where they decided to gang up on Tisha Torres and kicked her out of the room because they're like, "Well, you're fighting someone that we might fight in the future, and we don't want you stealing secrets from a room." And I just remember this sad image of Tisha Torres kind of like waddling down the hallway, dragging a mattress behind her because she'd been kicked out of her room. And I was like, "Good Lord, I just don't think I want to be a party of this." I mean, there are many wonderful female athletes, but I am not equipped to be the one to diffuse this drama because when I try, they all just ended up getting they would bond and resolve their differences, and then both end up mad at me when I tried to be the barrier in between the two of them. So I was like this is truly horrifying. And the other thing that kind of just worked its way in, they didn't make it like a big running theme, was Rose Namajunas talked about her early life. She said, I can't remember if Pat was her fiance at that point, but she said, my boyfriend or my fiance has really encouraged me to talk about this and just so I can move through it. And she kind of told the world that she'd been sexually abused when she was younger, and that it really kind of affected who she was and kind of made her a quiet kid. And she always had this like sullen, angry, I'm going to fight you look, which is why she got that nickname Thug Rose. I mean, that was a nickname given to her long before she entered Invicta or UFC. That was something she carried with her. And, I remember thinking like, wow, I'm glad she found someone that's, good and stable and sort of helping her grow as a person. And then, years later I'm like, oh my God, it was Pat Barry. But, so that was the early evolution of sort of Rose as a person and as a fighter. And, I'll just skip through she just tore through everybody in the show. She was getting impressive finishes. There was all this drama going on in the house and people fighting and sniping at each other. And Rose just looked like a little kid walking through it, like la-di-da, like just oblivious to all of that. People were trying to draw her into these squabbles, and she's just like, huh, what's going on? I'm part of a group. This is cool. And then she makes it to the finals against Carla Esparza. And did you catch that fight?
I did catch that fight. I'll watch the tough finales. I just won't watch the tough nowadays.
So can you kind of remind everyone what happened in Rose versus Carla Esparza for the inaugural strawweight championship?
I feel like if I'm remembering this right, granted this was 5 years ago, Carla mostly bullied her for a good part of the fight. Carla obviously had the wrestling advantage in that fight. And it seemed like, I know when I was watching, I kind of had the opinion of it kind of feels like a matter of time before Carla is going to get a submission or just a TKO. Her wrestling was so much better than Rose's at the point in time. It seemed like Rose didn't have a whole lot from her, if I'm remembering it right. And it ended in the third round. Carla got, it was a rear naked choke with like a minute and a half left. And it was just kind of like, okay. But I remember watching that and thinking, I'm pretty sure there's someone's going to take that from Carla, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was Rose a little bit down the line. Like she always, even in that loss, because in her pro career when she fought Carla Esparza for the title, that was her fourth pro fight, if we're not counting the exhibition fights for the Ultimate Fighter. So, world title in the UFC 4 fights in. She was probably 21, I think is what we agreed on. You probably have to be 21 to go into the Ultimate Fighter nowadays.
Correct.
Like there was more room for improvement. It seemed like she had something there. It just seemed like this matchup was too early in the career.
Well, and the thing that really killed her in that fight is when she went absolutely nuts in the first round, Rose. I mean, she was doing crazy jumping techniques. She was going 100 miles per hour. It was just she put so much energy into that. The first even few minutes, had a huge adrenaline dump, and then just sort of ran out of gas and mentally shut down after that. I think she's like the moment got to her. It was too big. She wasn't ready for it. And yeah, can you blame her? You just said it was her fourth pro fight, and she's fighting for a championship, and she's being billed as the next Ronda Rousey. Because at that point, Rose had not gone full Sinead O'Connor yet. People are still looking at her. Oh, she's this cute little. You know what? Actually, the way people are treating her, it reminds me of some of the female characters in these animes where it's like, oh, look, she's a badass, but she's also this cute little girl. Haha, like that kind of sense to her. It's like, which actually I thought was a very poignant moment in her career. A little bit later, 2 fights later, that I think I'm the only one who thinks about it in these terms. But have I ever told you about my theory of the Cutie-Weight division?
No, I've never even heard that word before. I'm interested though.
Okay. So this is just the name. You could maybe come up with a better name, but I think there's a secret women's division in the UFC where the matchmakers are matching up fighters that they just think people will find attractive, and they'll be able to sell fights purely on sex appeal. And they don't. It's like good if the one fighter wins that they want to win, but they don't really care so much. It's not about that. I definitely know there is a champion to this division. It's Paige Van Zandt, and the way I know that is other fighters who I'm pretty sure are in the Cutie-Weight division keep calling her out, even though it makes no sense in terms of like rankings or progression of the title. And so from these weird callouts and people Paige Van Zandt fights, I'm able to sort of start to trace like, oh. This fighter like is in the Cutie-Weight division. This fighter is, and it's like attractive hot fighters who probably don't have big time title aspirations. And the reason I found it so interesting was, Rose fights Carlos Esparza, goes crazy in the first round, gasses, gets choked out, fights Angela Hill, just chews through her. I mean, that was a first round submission, and takes her back, chokes her out. And I think that was even what kind of sent Angela Hill temporarily packing from the UFC. And then
that fight.
And then after that Angela Hill win, it's like again they had just booked her for a championship fight, which she loses. She wins the next fight, and then they book her against Paige Van Zandt, which is one of I think the early Cutie-Weight division fights. So first of all,
it might have been the first one.
Do you think my theory holds any water?
Oh, the sex appeal fights 100% do. There was no other logical reason that we just had Paige Van Zandt versus Rachel Ostovich other than your Cutie-Weight division theory.
Yeah, for 100%. I mean, and so who else do you think are the contenders in that? Because I've probably given maybe 45 or 50 seconds of trying to figure this out, but I'm actually here. Let me just see if I can pull up Paige Van Zandt. That's the easiest way to figure it out who's in that division.
Look at everybody she's fought. She fought.
Okay.
I believe her first fight in the UFC was Felice.
Yeah, well, and that's when people thought Felice was okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying so hard not to just bag on Felice, but that's when Felice's thing was like wearing short, skimpy outfits to the weigh-ins. And she was, everyone's like, oh, Felice is so hot. And then people who were, then people who were like actually hot started coming to fighting. It's one of those things where it's all relative. What's that saying? Like let me not
big fish in a small pond.
Let me choose my Midwest state very carefully, so not to insult any listeners.
Midwest, who really cares?
Dude, I was trying to help you out, and then you just went and said that. Whatever. Let's say like a Kentucky 10 is a California 5.
That seems generous.
I've heard that said before. I pick Kentucky because that's one of the Midwest states I've spent the least amount of time. So it's okay, Kentucky listeners. It was just an example. I'm sure your women in their 7 teeth are beautiful. But I think that's sort of what happened with fighting. So yeah, I think that was, she fought Felice, she fought Rose, she fought.
Oh, actually, her first fight in UFC was Kaylin Curran, who at the time also would have fell into the Cutie-Weight division probably.
100%. Beck Rawlings. Well, everyone's got a type, right? And yeah. Michelle Watterson. I'm trying to think how to not.
See if you say it.
Get myself into two. Michelle Watterson is 100% a Cutie-Weight fighter who's also very talented and can compete in the actual division. But it made me a little bit sad when she beat. Who did she just beat? It was
Michelle.
Yeah.
Carolina.
Yeah, she beat Carolina, who at this point should firmly be another Cutie-Weight fighter. She beat Carolina and then called for a title shot, and I was like, Michelle, no, stop. You're not.
I remember that was like one of the first or second episode of the podcast, and I was trying so hard not to laugh about it, and I was just trying to politely offer like, oh, maybe just one more fight. You just need to fight A or B, and then you'll be there. No one's gonna give you a title fight when you beat like the number 7. Settle down. Yeah,
and she's an incredibly talented fighter. She's a gorgeous woman, but she's an atom weight for one. And two, I was like, no, I do not want to see you fight. I don't want to see you fight Jessica Andrade in particular. And she's fought Rose. We know how that ended. She got blasted and then choked out like summarily. So it's like, Michelle, I am a supporter of your whole warrior mom thing that you're doing, and it's great, but just like let's be a little bit realistic, please. I do not want to see you get just pummeled by Andrade, and that would happen. So yeah, there's I think there's definitely a Cutie-Weight division. I think we've established that. I think this was gone from theory to just cold hard fact, which is why I found it so interesting that, that when they booked Paige Van Zandt against Rose, that's when Rose was like, "Nah, fuck all of this. I'm shaving my head."
That was one of my favorite ones because do you remember? It almost felt like she was trying to shit on Paige. Because do you remember when Paige said she was gonna shave her head if she raised so much money for a cancer charity, and then she backed out of shaving it after they raised the amount of money?
Yes.
Because it was I shit you not, it was like 4 or 5 days after Paige announced that she wasn't shaving her head that Rose just went full fucking buzzed it all off. It felt like it was a little fuck you to her. But I think Rose's explanation was she just got tired of dealing with it in training or something.
Oh, I remember the exact
on,
quote.
Rose, just let us have this.
The exact quote was, and this I think this was Pat Barry relaying Rose. She was in practice and she goes, "Shit's in my way, cut it off." Because I gotta imagine long hair when you're trying to grapple and it's getting in your face, and she's just like, and that I think that was like a mental turn for Rose, right? You know, she'd been this this kind of kid floating through MMA, just bright eyed, and this is all crazy great, and then that kind of was a mental shift. You know what? Fuck that shit. It's in my way.
A little bit more badass.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and she looked more badass, right? She was full Ripley and aliens, like ready to just kill some monsters.
How bad is it? I've never seen that movie.
I've seen the first one a long time ago. It was fine. If anything, wow, this is a tangent. But did you know that a high school has done a stage version of Alien now?
I heard about it on Rogan's podcast this week. I don't remember what the guest was, but they were talking about it.
That is hilarious. I would go see that for sure.
I think they were inspired by Bob's Burgers because a few seasons ago, that was an entire episode. Was their entire school play was Alien from the alien's point of view, not whoever the lead actress was.
Fair enough. But so
it's nothing to this conversation. It's just mental diarrhea.
Anyhow, in the Rose, she makes that mental turn of like, you know what? I'm serious now. I'm gonna be a badass. Like I'm not in this your stupid Cutie-Weight division. You're making me fight the little blonde girl who has no idea how to fight. I'm cutting my hair off, and we're about to see what's up. And if good Lord, like I was actually at that fight live, just watching Rose put on a pure ass whooping. Like in between rounds, like Paige Van Zandt is just bloody, like blood gushing down her face, and Rose just chokes her out in the 5th round. So it was not even a quick ass beating. It was a 4.5 round just dismantling, ending up in a choke. And that was
like that night, Dana White probably shed a tear.
A little bit.
As soon as the cut started happening, just one solo tear right out of the corner of his eye.
Well, you know what? Because at that point, they thought Paige Van Zandt was actually a legit contender because she was beating people, and Rose just put a stop to that right quick. So then she beats Teacher Torres. She's in her sort of her badass stage, and then she takes that split decision L to Carolina. And did you follow kind of the drama around that fight?
I do not think I did.
Okay, so I've heard Pat Barry talk about this, after the fact, and this is why I love Pat Barry. I mean, I just from everything I've heard of him, he seems like a flawed human being, as we all are, but just a fantastic human being as well, and a stand-up guy. And he's like, that loss was all me. That was my fault, because that was right around the time where he got booted out of the Brock Lesnar training camp. Like, he was drinking, he was being erratic, and
That was right after 200, which would have been the camp for Brock.
Yeah. So that was the Brock Lesnar fight was UFC 200. The Carolina fight was UFC 201. And apparently, like, he and Rose were having all kinds of relationship problems. It was a turbulent home life, and that was one of the few fights where she told him not to come with her.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
like he's always there in her corner, at the hotel. She said, just don't even bother showing up. I don't want you there. And Rose, as we've kind of mentioned before, she is an emotional person, and her head was obviously not in the right place in that fight, and she loses. And this is where I give Pat Barry so much credit in the world. And again, I know you said you don't really like to listen to Errol Hawani interviews,
Yeah.
but guys, I will give you a little bit of a recap. But if you listen to one MMA interview that kind of gives you just a slice of life into what some fighters go through, and gives you a little bit more perspective on the Rose Namajunas story, go find the Rose Namajunas Pat Barry interview from before she's about to fight the first. Rose is going to fight Joanna for the first time. So that would have been probably October, September 2014 or 2017.
There you go.
So basically, what Pat Barry said is, he's like, that loss, that was all on me. Like, she had all this other crap to deal with. I wasn't there for her to help her focus, and I was making her less focused. And he said he basically took a look at his life and where he was at, and just immediately stopped drinking, cut everything out, and he's like, you know what? If she's gonna be a champion, she has to live a champion lifestyle, and how's she gonna do that if I'm being an idiot? So I cut everything out, and I started working out more. I started doing everything to support her to be a champion, And the part in that interview that just gave me chills is he just basically detailed this turnaround in his life so he could better support her, this complete turnaround in the relationship. And then there's one point where, like, I can't remember what it was. She, like, went off, out of the room to get their dog or something. And he just, like, leans in close to the mic and just, whispers, like, it's like, she's going to be champion of the world. Just with certainty. I literally got chills during that interview listening to tell it. And I was like, holy shit, I think this is for real. And I just one got a little bit more insight into that story. Man, I gained so much respect for Pat Barry. A, hearing him own up for how he was sort of fucking up her career and the relationship. And then B, the fact that he just turned it around so swiftly, so devotedly, and decided he was never going to be the problem again.
You got me. This is actually, I wish I had listened to this interview now.
Oh man, it was amazing. So if nothing else from this podcast that you guys get, go back and listen to that interview. It was incredible. And then, from there, she takes the Carolina loss, and then they put her against Michelle Waterson. They're like, yeah, okay, you lost to Carolina. Maybe you really just are in the Cutie-Weight division. And she's like, you think so? And was it a punch or a kick where she dropped Waterson? Do you remember?
What was it? God damn, I wish you hadn't said kick, because I would have almost confidently said, like, overhand left or right. And I can't remember what it is now. But I do remember it was an emphatic knockdown, whatever it was. Like, I thought it was just going to be TKO victory just off of that.
Yeah, she just drops her. Where you're like,
violent. I remember that.
Like, holy shit, was that Rose? Like, it's like a little string bean Rose just did that. Oh, good lord! And then just savagely chokes Waterson out. And you're like, wow, okay, she's gonna get a title shot against JJ, and that's where we started to see Rose. I think it was that Waterson fight where she just really turned the corner. It was true. Pat Barry changed his lifestyle. She started taking it more seriously. She'd been under Trevor Whitman for a while there, and from what I've heard everybody say, he's a phenomenal coach, but it just takes a while to learn everything he's teaching, because it is so deep and nuanced. And yeah, and then she goes in and TKOs JJ, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the strawweight queen, the boogie woman, in the first round, and then beats her pretty decisively. I mean, it was a good fight, but beats her clearly in the rematch. And it's like, dang, like, is Rose for real? I mean, it looks like her mindset is there. She didn't, get flustered by all of Joanna's head games or anything like that, right? And then that kind of set the stage for the Andrade fight. And what were your thoughts going into that fight? Just kind of knowing her whole development.
Anyone's fighting Jessica Andrade, I get a little bit worried for him. It could be freaking Amanda Nunes, and I'd still be like, Jessica Andrade might just throw her on her head. And I always say throw on her head. No, in no way was I predicting that as like the outcome of the fight. It's just when I think Jessica Andrade, I think like the little bulldog, not the greatest at anything, but can just physically bully you at that weight. And seems like the kind of person who just pick you up and drop you, like, oh, I can't figure out what to do, drop you on your head or some shit. Like that, it may be completely incorrect, but that's always how I felt about Jessica Andrade when she dropped down to strawweight. And again, wasn't watching the fights, a little busy, but to hear that it was a slam on the head that knocked her out, I go, well, that's about the most Jessica Andrade way to win, so doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, just to remind people. Andrade was fighting at 135. I mean, she's what, like 4.5 feet tall, and
Maybe.
she beat Raquel Pennington at 135. Raquel Pennington, who challenged for, I mean, it wasn't that competitive a fight, but did fight for the 135-pound title against Nunes. Like, Andrade is that powerful, where she was able to compete and beat people. And then, so it's, exactly what you said. Like, that was my worry. I mean, she's just so physically overpowering, especially at 115. And like, when I looked at it, and I still think this is the case, she's a terrible stylistic matchup for Rose. I mean, because Rose is, if I'm trying to think of how to make this a little bit nerdier of an analogy. If they were Lord of the Rings characters, wow, I found the way. Wow, I found the way and then some. If they were Lord of the Rings characters, like Rose is, like the sort of elf who's just very graceful and finesse based, and Andrade is just like just angry, powerful little dwarf who's just gonna smash. And in that matchup, it's like you're locked in a cage, man. She's gonna get close to Rose eventually. And when I looked at it, I'm like, man, this stylistically, it's a bad matchup. Eventually, she will get close to Rose. Eventually, she's gonna make it gritty and dirty, and she's gonna take it to a place where Rose isn't comfortable. And Rose, at this point, probably does have the technical skill to fight that off and handle it, but she's going to need a ton of mental resolve, because she's going to have to repeatedly get herself out of bad situations that she doesn't want to be in and that are really uncomfortable for her.
And Rose was, I rewatched the fight right before we started this, since I obviously missed it last night. Rose was doing exceptionally well in the first round. I thought her striking was very well. Her footwork was working great. Knowing the result now, the part that breaks my heart is seeing almost the exact same slam happen in round one. And you would hope that Rose would learn from that, and then second round she will not let go of the arm and just slam straight on her head. I'm like, if that was some poetic foreshadowing or something. I after seeing the first round, because I knew that it was weird. I knew the result. I knew Andrade won, but after the first round, rewatching it this afternoon, I was like, man, how the fuck is Andrade going to come back from that? Like Rose was lighting her up. She had her bleeding in like the first 40 seconds, busted open her eyebrow or just under somewhere in the eye region. Her jab was looking exceptional. She was circling out good. She was escaping some of those clinch areas. And then Andrade went Hulk smash.
So, I mean, agree. I thought Rose looked phenomenal, like absolutely incredible. I mean, I except for maybe Shevchenko, I can't think. And this is including Joanna. I've never seen a striking clinic that thorough and dominating by a female. I mean, you know what? I mean, at this point, there's Nunes, Shevchenko, and Rose. I mean, those are the best I've seen to do it. And it was clean, but it was like painful, right? Because that's the one thing. Like Shevchenko is incredible, but it never really seems like she's exacting that much damage and punishment when she hits.
She's got the Michael Bisping hand. Everyone called his hands pillow hands. She's got like the pillow hands at 125.
But like little Rose, I was like, damn, she's busting her up.
She has that weird skinny frame with an unsuspecting pop on the punches. Like the jab just snaps the head back. It's just so crisp. I don't know the best way to describe it.
Yeah, that's it. They're just sharp, crisp punches where it's not powerful. She's just flicking them out there.
Sound.
Yeah,
she's doing everything right.
But here's where she did not do everything technically right. So obviously it was a plan by their camp and something she'd worked on. That as soon as Andrade got in close, and Andrade's usual takedown is a double. So as soon as she got in on the double, just to go straight for the Kimura. Because basically what you've done is once you get in on a Kimura when someone's trying to double, they cannot actually pick you up because you've rooted them in place. And that's what she did the first time, where she could kind of get her up, but it just wasn't effective. And what happened in that second round was Andrade goes in, she's trying to go for the double. Same thing, Rose locked in immediately on the Kimura. But then at that point, Andrade switched from a double to a single. And Rose, it looked like, and she said later, she just kind of mentally checked out. I mean, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but Rose is basically like, yeah, I just got mentally tired. I just didn't really want to be there anymore. Even though she was dominantly winning the fight and piecing Andrade up. And she just didn't react. She was just sort of, I think, in autopilot mode, and she was locked in on that Kimura, and she did not adjust. So there were two things that could have happened when Andrade went from a double to a single. The first thing, and if you guys want to actually look up the technique, and this would have been the best thing, is Rose should have just completely abandoned the Kimura, and she could have gone for a switch, which is a wrestling technique. Basically what you do is, so if you can kind of, I'm trying to explain this the best way I can. If you can visualize it, Andrade has her two arms locked around Rose's one leg. All Rose had to do was put one of her inside arm, I think it would have been her right arm, over Andrade's arms, in between Andrade's legs, and that would work as a pivot point, and she would basically swivel herself around Andrade's entire body and take her back, at least momentarily. That would have been dirty. She would have looked sick. It would have looked like Andrade was just grasping for desperation takedowns, and Rose might have even gotten a finish off of that. And I think, I can't remember, I think that Cruz might have even been called for that on the replay. That would have been the best thing. Would have looked absolutely dominating. That was the best move. The second thing, all she had to do was just let go of that Kimura in midair. I mean, and that's if she was even slightly paying attention to what was going on, once Andrade had her up, she would just release the hold, and she would have ended up rolling through onto her back, but she wouldn't have gotten dropped straight on her head. You know, Andrade would have gotten top position. You know, Rose would have had to work off of her back, but it was just being completely mentally checked out. And that's something that I think even a relatively new grappler would just instinctively do. And so you could kind of see, I don't think it was revisionist history where Rose was like, yeah, I just kind of didn't want to be there, and just mentally checked out after the fact.
Yeah, I saw some people were claiming that it was a spike on the head, and this is just something people apparently need to know. If it's hard, fighter A, fighter B, if a fighter is attacking a submission, apparently the way the rule is written is you can slam them however you want. It is up to them to let go of the submission. Otherwise, if they keep holding on to it, you can pretty much slam them any way you want to escape the submission the way the rule is written. I think it was Big John McCarthy, or it was maybe Mark Goddard. Someone shared the exact screenshot from the rule book about that. So that's just so people know, since we are talking about this. That's why even people in Q&As, like Funny MMA's Q&A today, I saw saying, like, did Andrade deserve the victory? Yes, that was a 100% completely legal move if people did not know. Like, it was just a mental lapse on Rose's part that allowed it to happen. It should have never happened in the first place.
So that happens, and then Rose in post-fight is like, oh, even in the octagon, she's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, you know. And hard committing to retirement, but it said she's like, I was thinking this would be my last fight before the fight even started. So it's crazy. Like it's been this whole roller coaster that Rose has been on of being this sort of young, wide-eyed fighter who's just erratic and all over the place and having these, crying, writhing around in the octagon even after she wins, to
just pure emotion,
shaving her head off and becoming a badass, to having relationship troubles and not being able to really focus in a fight, to like refocusing. And I mean, probably other than Conor going through some of the most brutal kind of psychological trash talk and warfare from Jacek, and just not even budging, just stone-faced in a press conference, Jacek doing everything she can to fuck with her, and she's just reciting, I think she said she was reciting the Lord's Prayer, just like a straight assassin blessing a victim she's about to kill. And then we get to this Andrade fight where she looks every bit like that assassin, and then second round's like, nah, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, crazy wild ride that she's been on. And I mean, where do you think she goes from here?
I don't. There's two options. She's either going to retire or fight. We were talking about this before we started. She's the kind of person that if she retired, I believe she'd be 100% content retiring at this point in her career. She's the type of person who just wants to get into fighting. She had the title aspirations, but her end game is just being able to have the house, the husband, the dog, her little backyard garden, and she can live completely content. She doesn't need the cars. She doesn't need the fame. She doesn't need all the money. She just needs, the nice little retirement house to enjoy life with her husband. And I could see her taking that, the way she was talking. It's just so weird because it's so young in her career, but she does seem to be thinking so far ahead as far as it goes. Like this doesn't feel like it was just some spur of the moment. I want to retire. I'm done with this shit. It seems like she's been thinking about it for at least a few months.
Well, she's definitely been thinking about it for a while, but I think it was even a little bit more simple, and than just wanting the husband in the house. I don't think that was her end game. I don't think she got into fighting like that. That would be a really weird path for if you're like a young attractive woman and you're like, what, I just want like a nice stable home life, and I want a house and a dog. And I think the path to do that is to go into cage fighting. Like, maybe they're not maybe. I'm sure there's some people crazy enough out there where they see the road to that. I think from what we know about Rose, it was as simple as like she had some real demons from her childhood, and she had a rough childhood. It wasn't even just the sexual abuse that happened. She also grew up in a rough neighborhood in Milwaukee. I remember she was saying she was like the only white girl, and people would kind of mess with her. Like she had some shit she was trying to exercise, and I think a lot of the times you see female fighters, like they have that kind of backstory. Hell, a lot of times male fighters have backstory. There's something that happened to them when they're younger, and that's what pushes. They're not just fighting the person in front of them. They're kind of fighting their past. And not to be too armchair psychologist here, but I think the crazy thing with Rose was to become the best fighter she could be. She had to conquer those demons. She had to get in control of her emotions, and she had to be able to be at peace with her past and be that steady, just stone cold assassin that we saw against you in Jacek. But the crazy thing is, once she conquered those demons, and once she got to the place and where she was that kind of ultimate version that she could be of the fighter, she no longer wanted to fight.
Yeah, that's completely correct. Well, I'm just flustered right now. That makes a lot of sense. Basically, is what I'm trying to say.
So it's weird. Like I don't know. As a fan, I'd love to see Rose fight some more. I mean, she's still only 26 years old, right? I don't think she's even hit her peak yet. You know,
It feels like she's nowhere even close to it. The striking clinic she put on, it felt like people always use the hit another gear. Like it felt like maybe she just hit third gear when she came out in the first round of that fight. So depending on what kind of car she is, she might have six, she might have four, who knows? But it felt like that was gonna be that first round to me felt like, oh, we're about to hit the fucking Rose Namajunas show.
so
Like the performance she was putting on was just spectacular, and it felt like it was going to be something that related to a lot of fight fans who even just on their own may not like female fighting, but how clean and precise everything was, and how it seemed like the pace she was putting on, it felt like that was going to be a performance that was going to get her a lot more attention.
so I mean, agreed. I mean, I as a fan of Rose the fighter, I'd love to see her keep going. I mean, I think she's probably 2 or 3 years from hitting like the absolute peak of where she could get to, and that would be amazing. And there's so many great matchups, right? That we could see her fight Gedalia. I mean, that would be a great matchup. There's Nina Ansarov is still out there. There are a lot of good people in that strawweight division. And then that's the thing, though, as a fan of just Rose the person, I'm kind of like, you know what? If you've conquered those demons, and you know you're financially stable, I don't know. Go be happy. Do something else with your life, because she's definitely could. I don't know. What do you think? I mean,
People don't like to hear it, but this is a thought I've had too with other fighters. Like, there's some fighters where I care more about them as a person than their entire fight career. She, I'm not the world's biggest Rose Namajunas fan, but this is a good example of the way you described it. If she's content in life to retire at this point in time, more power to her. She's lived what she wants to live. She's done it on her terms. It never happens in MMA. Let someone have their little Cinderella story. If this is the way you feel content for your career to go, and you can happily live after this, just live up in Denver with your husband and dog, do it. You Not everybody needs to stay in MMA until they're falling apart, coming in like BJ Penn or Anderson Silva now. It is okay to let someone ride off into the sunset when they feel ready. And if that's what she wants to do, more power to her.
yeah. I hope she takes, and I think she's going to, because she took a good long time after the second Jacek fight. I hope she kind of takes her time and thinks and reflects and meditates and floats above the floor and does all that stuff. Oh man, I just don't have time to do the big time edits. But before the Andrade fight, I wanted to do a kind of Boss Logic style photo edit where Rose was the ancient one and she was sort of like force punching Andrade in the chest, but instead of Banner flying out of the Hulk, it would be the Hulk, like a Hulk-like version of Andrade flying out of Andrade, because that was what I felt like the dynamic is. Yeah, if only I still had 6 hours to devote to pieces like that at a time, but
there's someone screaming right now at their computer when they're listening to this. Don't start talking about Marvel.
No, I'm not going to. I'm done. I've laid that to bed. But I guess what I'm saying is, if Rose finds some new motivation to fight, as a fight fan, I would be ecstatic to see that. But the absolute, especially with Rose and who she is and the way it seems she's wired, the last thing in the world I ever want to see is her to just keep fighting for some more paychecks because she's good at it. Because I don't think it'll go well for her. And we've seen how amazing she could be. Like, she lit up Jacek when she was motivated and she was into it and she was focused. And she lost to and get bullied around by Carolina when she wasn't. So it's like, I just don't want to see her basically be forced into fighting for money if she doesn't want to do it. And that's all I gotta say about that, I guess.
I get it. It makes sense.
I'm doing the Forrest Gump sort of bookends to my thoughts. I've done this 3 times now. That's all I got to say about Rose Namajunas.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I didn't have anything else to add to it. You covered it extremely well. You touched on plenty of good thoughts.
Oh,
nice broad talk right there.
Well, and to bring it back though, and this has, I guess, been a running theme through this whole podcast, and we opened up by talking about both of our physical ailments and how they might affect us. And by the way, not to get too cocky, but I think so far we've made some poignant points, and this podcast has maybe not been a roaring fire, but a good smoldering fire.
Keep you warm.
Did you catch that little Marvel reference I slipped in? But and then there's like Anderson Silva and what happens when a fighter goes on too long and their body's getting beat up and they're having to get surgeries left and right. And good, thank God Rose didn't need to go to a hospital after that fight, because when she slammed, I was really worried she broke her neck.
Oh, it was definitely concerning. Again, I wasn't watching it live, but after seeing the replay, I was shocked that she didn't, not even just to go get checked out.
Yeah, I think
it was violent.
I think Rose is still kind of like a newborn baby where her growth plates still haven't hardened yet, so she's malleable. But like, yeah, in another 2 years when she reaches her final form, I think that just snaps her neck and she's in traction for a couple weeks. So, I guess one of the things that I just did want to kind of loop back around is just like when it's time to really attend to your health and doctors and how to even approach that. I mean, because I was joking about Kamaru Usman before, but like when I heard him on the Rogan podcast, and he was detailing all the crazy shit he was fighting with, like hernias and torn ligaments and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, like go to a doctor. Like you find a way, man. Like you have to. And it sounds like he is now that he's champ, which is great. But we were even talking beforehand where it's like both of us have had very different experiences with that, where you've had some pretty horrific injuries. I've had some bad ones myself. And it sounds like you've been down the road of barely seeing any doctors. And at least in the last 5 years, I've probably seen too many. So I guess what, like, for you personally, like what was that point where you're like, man, I probably should see a doctor and I haven't?
I don't know, because I've let some really big injuries slip without getting, diagnosed, getting them fixed and everything. Like I can't say with 100% confidence. I just go off of feeling of previous injuries. I'm about 98% sure I tore my hip flexor during Hurricane Harvey when I was pulling people out of flooded houses. I stepped off into a ditch and it was a pain like nothing. It made snapping a wrist, snapping a collarbone feel like pinch. The pain that happened for that. And I can't, usually the only reason I break down and go to doctors is because I just know, I just broke something that needs a cast to be able to heal. Like I was raised in like middle of nowhere, Georgia. I looked up the census when I was talking to someone a few weeks ago. And when I lived there was about 600 people. So it's not like doctors were exactly close. It was probably a good 45-minute drive if you wanted to get to even a semi-decent orthopedist. So like I grew up on I just broke my middle finger. Show my dad, he'll pop it back into most close enough place. It looks straight, and then just tape it to the buddy and just ride it out for 6 weeks. So like honestly, usually that's the only reason I'll go to doctors. I was forced to go and get my knee checked out when I tore my MCL in football, because I guess it happened at the school and so they needed confirmation. And I was forced to go get my knee checked out when I tore my PCL in a car accident right after I graduated high school. But I mean, usually I'm just stupid and I just try to ride it out. It's not me trying to be macho or anything. I'm sure there's someone listening to this thinking that's it. It's just I don't like going to doctors, and for me, I'd rather just deal with whatever it is and get it close enough than maybe I have some deep-seated fear of doctors that I don't even realize or some shit.
Well, that's okay. That's what I actually wanted to ask you about, because I had a friend who talked about doctors very similar to you. Like, he grew up mostly without health insurance, and in his case, I'm not saying this is the same in yours, but maybe you could say it was the exact opposite. Like he was kind of afraid of them a little bit. Like he thought that they were going to look down on him. He didn't, it was almost that sort of ostrich phenomena where it's like, well, if I go to the doctor, then they might say that there's something seriously wrong with me, and so I'm just not going to go. And it was like, yeah, but they'll still. It's not the Schrodinger's cat where it like might be wrong with you, or you might be fine. Like if it's wrong with you, it's wrong with you. So it'll still be wrong with you if you don't go see a doctor. Is it kind of like that, or what's the psychology?
Actually, I think I understand the psychology. I've had this thought before, and I kind of try to bury it down. But you just said some trigger word that reminded. The main reason I usually try to just write it out is I know someone in my family is going to listen to this. I know a few people do, and they're not going to like hearing this. But anytime I was in my family, I always kind of felt like the mule of the family. Like I'm old, reliable. If there's a problem, I'll just tell Austin. He'll fix it. He'll figure out whatever it is. If someone else is hurt, he'll take them to the doctor. Something needs to be done. He'll do it. So I don't know if it's just the way I was raised or how I felt around my family, but I always felt like if I asked to go to the doctor, I was being a huge burden on the family. Like even in times where I had broken leg, broken wrist, or something, full cast for covering whatever it is, I was always still trying to, do all my chores, keep up all my responsibilities around the family, because I just felt like it was my job in our family to be the dependable one. No matter how chaotic stuff went, you could at least rely on me to do something. And so I don't. It just always felt like, oh, if I asked them to take time out of their day to go take them to the doctor, then they're just gonna be mad at me. They're gonna keep an attitude with me for days, if not a week, and then they're gonna be mad when I can't do the stuff I normally do. And so it's really weird. I just kind of what's the word for it? I just kind of started trying to ignore whatever would happen because like I've told you before, between fractures and clean breaks, I'm somewhere around 55, 56 broken bones. Um, a few of those are unconfirmed because again I don't like going to the doctor, but when your toes turn half sideways, you kind of have a sneaking suspicion it's broken. And 13 all the concussions, all the torn ligaments and stuff. It's just I something in my fucked up psychology just always made it feel like I'm going to be a burden if I ask someone to go get this fixed. So just fucking grit through it. It'll stop hurting in a few days. Get it back close as you can and just keep on with and just try not to put any attention on me for any of that. And I know it's a fucked up feeling, but that was just the way it's always been. Like even yeah, I told people, I'm pretty sure I talked about it on the podcast how my dad had cancer for 3 years. During that time, we canceled my health insurance just so that it would be more money in our family's pocket. And because I just knew whatever happens to me, I'm sure I can just grit it out. And in that time, suspectedly tore the hip flexor, pulling people out of houses in Hurricane Harvey across the street from me, throwing them in a kiddie pool, stepped in the drainage ditch. And later on, when my dad's health got worse and he couldn't walk up the stairs or anything, he had to sleep downstairs in his recliner. I brought a spare mattress down the stairs one night so my mom could sleep next to him and be able to help him if he woke up in the middle of the night. Fell down, I want to say it was 6 or 7 stairs. It was one step down, like when the stairs go up and you have to do the pretty much 180 turn to go up the other way, that quick turn one. I pretty much fell from the midway point of that, like maybe one step down, and just caught my toe on the bottom of it and just felt it snap. But even then, I was like, well, I canceled my insurance a few weeks ago. I'll hopefully I can put it back in place. I'll tape it up to the next one. They need me to be doing the stuff around the house, so I'm not going to ask them to pay any money to take me to the doctor or anything. That's just be a burden. That just take away money for helping my dad out with all his chemotherapy and all that stuff. So it's just real fun, fucked up psychology that's probably rooted in silliness, but it's just become a part of who I am at this point.
Yeah, man, that's deep. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's like a very noble reason to not want to go to the doctor. Because the friend I mentioned earlier, I think he was just scared. I mean, he was scared that they were going to tell him something was bad, and he was thinking more about himself, and it sounds like you were thinking more about everyone around you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's just kind of the role I've always felt. It started developing, pretty early in my family, but it's just always the way I felt like that was my role to play in our whole family scheme.
But and this is me just trying to be a friend and maybe change your perspective a little bit. I mean, I've heard in the past you were mentioning frustration about your dad not following doctor's orders and not going in to see the doctor when he needed to. Is that pretty accurate? Am I remembering it correctly?
He just did. Yeah, this is all my daddy issues. It seemed like every time the doctor told him to do something, he did the exact opposite. And in my head, it's always he was choosing his vices over his family. And so that's where a lot of the resentment issues came from.
So
whether it's right or not, that's just the way it feels in my head.
So if you were on a scale of 0 to being none at all to 10 being perfect, how well did he take advantage of the medical care that was available to him?
Uh, I don't. It's weird to describe. It's so weird to describe. Like his first 6 months, he was on his chemo. He was still he was still drinking, which they tell you obviously you're not supposed to drink when you're in the middle of
You,
chemotherapy.
it's not a good idea to mix alcohol with like a crazy cocktail of toxic chemicals being introduced in your body. That
Yeah, like the first 6 months of chemo, I know he was drinking. I can't remember the timeline exactly because just the 2.5 years felt like an entire lifetime of dealing with all that stuff. So like that was one of the big problems. Another big problem is you hear a lot how cancer can feed off of sugar, and it seemed like as soon as because he used to never really be a dessert person. He would eat ice cream maybe twice a year, and then maybe he'd have a candy bar once a month. And it seemed like once he started the chemotherapy, it was he just decided, oh, I'm on chemotherapy. I'm going to eat whatever I want to, keep weight on. But he was eating the wrong things. Like we were keeping, a case of Butterfingers stocked in the freezer. We were having to get, 3 things of ice cream a week when we were going to the grocery store. He was eating, all the frozen processed food. And it was really frustrating for me because during this time, my dad was always a big cook when we were younger. Even through like early college for me, he was always a big cook. My house was always the house everybody came over to because they know, oh, my dad's going to cook and he's going to cook in excess. He did not know what a serving size was. If he was going to cook, say, corn dogs, for me and 3 friends, it wasn't going to be like, oh, I'll make, a dozen. It was, I'll make 80. And so when, all the cancer stuff, his mobility started going down, because for people who don't know, it was lung cancer. In 2016, they did, I think it's called a lobectomy. They removed the bottom third of his right lung. So that's going to, if we're using MMA terms, that's going to affect your gas tank a lot more. He was having a lot of problems standing more than, 5 minutes or whatever. He was hooked up to oxygen machines. So in this time when he's supposed to be, eating all the right things, I started kind of learning how to cook better because I always took it for granted, like, oh, if we need dinner, just tell him he loves cooking, he'll do it. So now that was off the table. So I started like learning, and this was close to when I was starting to get healthier myself. This was right before it when I started learning this. So this is how I kind of had the new foundation to know how to cook healthy. But I was making him, like steak and vegetables and potatoes, chicken, chicken, a little bit of fried rice, some carb. I was making him like excellent dinners almost every night. Like I would get home from college, say, fuck whatever homework I have, I'm gonna make him dinner, and I would, bring him plates of just what I think was extremely good, medium rare steak, broccoli, potatoes, some French bread, and he would just sit it on his table, let it go cold, and then 20 minutes later he would ask for a bowl of ice cream and Butterfinger. Literally, what the doctor said. This is feeding your cancer. It was him taking what I was, trying to bust my ass to, keep him alive longer, and putting that aside and saying and choosing, oh, I want the stuff that's going to make me worse because it's what I feel like eating. And so that was always the problem with the resentment issues was he was choosing the vices over the right things to do. And so it felt like I was trying to empty, imagine being in a boat in the middle of the ocean, there's 3 holes in it, trying to empty the water out with a bucket, and then he was just continuously sitting there drilling more holes in the boat instead of helping throw the water out with me.
All right, so he's not. So I mean, it sounds like he was just blatantly disregarding everything in terms of his diet.
Diet, he wasn't exercising, like he wasn't doing therapy, like physical therapy, like they were telling him to do.
Was he at least going to treatments when he was supposed to?
Yeah, he was great about me taking the treatments and going. He well, as far as chemotherapy goes, after a while, he, because he's completely ignoring his physical health when he's not at the doctor's office, he started getting pneumonia a lot. Which, granted, that is a byproduct of having, a third of your lung removed. Pneumonia is a lung-based illness. What? So, come on, brain, catch up. It's not disease, sickness. You get pneumonia, it's congestion in your lungs. So that was obviously going to be a weak point, but because he wasn't doing all the physical stuff he needed to, even when he had the pneumonia, he wasn't getting over it. It was just kind of going from like a 10 out of 10 can't breathe, need to go to the hospital for pneumonia, to like a 2 out of 10. And so that he started having to cancel chemotherapy because you can't go to chemotherapy when you're sick. That's just one of the rules. Your body doesn't react right. And so when he started missing those, that's when it eventually metastasized. After we learned and we finally got him back to the doctor, that was when it metastasized from his lungs to his adrenal gland, and then the last few months to his brain. And so, to the way I viewed it, just psychology wise, it was his vices basically let the cancer win because he was choosing what he wanted over what he should have done. He just wasn't willing to make the not even hard choices. Like I was making the meals for him, putting them in his lap while he's watching TV, and he couldn't even do something as simple as just sit there and pick at the plate. He wouldn't even touch it. He would just sit it on the table next to him and then ask for, the poison basically 20 minutes later.
I mean, something that had to be incredibly hard on you, right?
Oh, I it was like I said, those 2.5 years felt like a lifetime. There were multiple nights where it legitimately just felt like I was having a mental breakdown because in this time I was a full-time college student. I couldn't work because basically my job was keeping him alive. I would I would leave my house as late as humanly possible to make it downtown to UH, go to my classes. I had no social life whatsoever. The second my classes were over, if not leaving earlier than classes were over, I was leaving, going back home, and then taking care of him. And so, do it just literally every day for 2.5 years. In the in those 2.5 years, I went to UFC 211, and then I went to the Cowboy and Yancey fight. I was out of my house for less than 24 hours during those fights, and even during those, I felt guilty for being out of the house because then it was just my mom taking care of them because it was a lot to deal with for two people, let alone one person. And so I felt guilty even taking those less than 24-hour breaks to go to fights and meet people, have a good time. And so yeah, there was probably 3 4 nights where it just felt like I had complete mental breakdowns and just shut down.
I'm not trying to get too emo, but I mean, do you remember was there like one time specifically where you got to that breaking point where you're like, I don't know if I can keep doing this? I mean, I remember a couple of my weird twisted journeys, so I just wanted to compare notes.
You know, I think the worst one was probably I was explaining the brought the mattress down, broke my toe trying to bring that down for my mom. I I fall down the stairs carrying a queen mattress just on my back by myself so she can lay next to him and keep an eye on him at night. Fall down the stairs, obviously break my big toe. It was purple almost immediately. It's crooked, everything. And they both started snapping at me for falling down the stairs. Like, oh, well, great, you just hurt yourself. That's great. We're gonna have to take you to the doctor now. We don't have the money for that. And so I just didn't say a word. I put the mattress down where it needed to be, and I just walked back up to my room, closed the door quietly, had my dogs already up there, and I don't remember if I cried or not, but that was like the heaviest anything's ever felt to me. I don't know the best way to articulate it because I'm not the greatest at expressing emotion stuff, but like that was when it felt like the weight of everything was just too much for me to handle, and it was I didn't
I know
really
what you
answer what it
mean.
was.
Did it physically? This was weird. I mean, did it physically feel like things were heavier? Did you feel like gravity got turned up?
Everything. I'm a big guy. I mean, when this happened, that was when I was close to the best shape of my life. I'm 6'9", 240 at the time. I felt like I was like a toddler just getting crushed by everything. Then it's like you described the gravity coming down on you. I just felt so tiny and just removed from everything. It was like too much to handle. It's so weird to describe.
Was there anything in particular that like you did that actually allowed you? When you said, "Oh, you had your dogs with me," my first thought in my head was, "Oh, thank God he had the dogs with him," because I know there's been a couple times where, like more recently, where something might have been a lot harder to handle, but I got a dog now, and he's just like licking my face. I'm like, all right, I feel a little bit better. I mean, but what were there any like ways that you were able to cope, or like what got you through those times?
It it was this stupid duty I have in my head that I'll take whatever I'll take all the lashing, donk the family mule. I'll take the lashings. I'll take whatever comes at me because it's my job to make sure that this keeps rolling forward and he stays alive and she stays able to go to work and take care of him. So it was just that weird sense of duty that I had towards the family. I didn't care how I felt really. It was just okay. Well, this is just one more shitty day. So what's one more on top of 2 years? So get over it. Make sure you go back down there. Make sure he gets his nightly shake to keep some weight on him. You don't get time to mule over this, or I don't know if that's the right word.
Jeez, man, it sounds like you almost just kind of got like numb emotionally.
Pretty much. That's how even I describe myself. It was a while back. It was before that, but I just basically shut my emotions off. It was like these aren't going to help me whatsoever. I'm just gonna just keep the stone face and just take whatever happens and just keep doing what I feel like is my job. And it may not be mentally healthy, but at least what needs to be done will get done.
Yeah, I know that's a really common coping mechanism that people going through trauma establish. I mean, do you is that still in effect? Are you still kind of dealing with the residual effects of that?
I'm always kind of shut off. Like I don't know if it's just the way I view the world or whatever. I don't feel a lot of empathy for a lot of people. Um, this is gonna sound really fucked up, but like even sitting in the hot for people who don't know, when my dad died, like we knew he was gonna die at basically 2 a.m. and we took him to the hospital, and they basically just told us, yeah, we're in a waiting game now. And so we just sat there watching as oxygen levels drop, 2-3% every 10 minutes, and we just basically sat in a room watching him die for probably 5 hours. And even when it all shut off, like I didn't feel any emotion about it. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel mad. My mom was crying. I was just comforting her, and I was just like, to me, it was just, this is the consequences of the actions. People die. People die faster if they do stuff that's not good. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do to change it. And so I was just consoling my mom, and they always say, say something to your whoever passed away as you're leaving. So I just looked at my dad and said, well, I know you did the best that you possibly could with what you had in your life. So bye. And I'm sure that'll make me sound like a monster to some people, but it's it's just become easier to just shut stuff off than actually deal with it. And even now, I mean, it's a little bit better now. Um, I still don't feel a lot of empathy towards people, but there's at least happy days now.
Well, so may I recap from the perspective that I heard that all from?
Go for it.
Uh,
No
so,
one
so
was expecting this when the podcast started.
so basically, your father was not taking care of his health to the best of his ability, or even close to the best of his ability, which led to him being, extremely compromised physically. Is this all correct so far?
Yeah. I mean,
And
cancer
y-
eventually wasn't doing his physical therapy, stopped being
yeah,
muscles
so
atrophied, couldn't walk. Sounds like you're
so
right.
because of the fact that your dad was not taking care of his health the way he could have, it became a huge burden to his entire family and his loved ones, and that is still having lasting effects. And it probably will have lasting effects years after his death. Best
Oh,
case scenario.
100%. I mean, the resent is still. I know it's theoretically. I don't know if that's the right word. It's unrealistic for me to still have the resent. I should just get over it. But like, this is the one aspect of mental health where I can recognize and just admit, like, yeah, it's going to take me a while to get over it. Because I mean, like, I don't want to sound douchey. Like, I come from like middle class, upper middle class family. Like, we never wanted when I was a kid because of my dad's job. And then when this happened, he can't work anymore. So, the truck he just bought, eventually that has to get taken away. The savings accounts we have are slowly drained down. I can't work because I'm pretty much his full-time nurse, so I can't even go and get money to contribute to the family. And my mom's working a job where, she's making 35, $40,000 a year at the time. And then she's rushing home, and then we're taking care of him, and we're up to 11 doing that. And it felt like at least we wanted him to at least appreciate the effort we were putting in. And so many nights it just felt like we were getting, like, he did not care about all the he couldn't even recognize that we were both burning ourselves out so much, and our entire family was just crumbling trying to keep him going. And like, all the savings accounts drained, every loan maxed out that we had, all our credit cards maxed out, everything. And then he still wasn't putting in the effort, so he passed away and just kind of left me and my mom, you know with nothing. We we sold a good bit of the stuff in our house. we we got enough from his life insurance that I could afford to buy a good enough car. There's nothing wrong with it. We each got a few $1,000. We were able to move back here, but it felt like he was attaching an anchor to us and didn't want to let go of the anchor whatsoever, and that's just where the resentment stuff comes from, I guess.
All right, AJ, follow me through. So I'm going to try to completely kind of connect the dots here.
Here we go.
We as people are very much the products of our parents.
Yeah.
And I've heard that we are doomed to often repeat their mistakes. And I guess what I'm trying to say to you is don't be that guy, because this is what I heard from you. Your dad didn't take care of his health, and it became this huge burden on his family. And you're saying, kind of because of that whole experience, you don't want to take care of your health because you're worried about becoming a burden. But what I'm saying to you is, somewhere down the line, if you don't take care of your health, you will similarly become a huge burden to somebody. And you've got like a great heart. I mean, the fact that you did everything you did for your family is tremendous. But there's a certain point where, to take care of other people, you have to have taken care of yourself first. And just hearing you talk and tell that story, it's like, I think like anyone who's still listening at this point is like just rooting for you to do well. And if you don't take care of that aspect of your life, you will fall into that same trap your dad did, just not for the same selfish reasons.
Yeah, it's just always a mentality for me is it's just pain. I'm sure you're talking about physical and mental. The physical stuff I don't care about.
Yeah, but it matters, right? It does.
Yeah, I should, but it hasn't stopped me yet. Again, I'll go to the doctor more if I actually have insurance. But right now, we still have we're still paying off hospital bills and stuff, just getting by as we can. And so it's like I'm not going to try to, get a crazy health insurance bill when I could be helping, pay our mortgage on the house that my mom bought.
Oh no, I understand that. I'm not chastising you for not going right now. I
obviously made better advances towards improving my health. I mean, I used to be 400 pounds. I used to be morbidly obese. And I mean, I lost 150 pounds. I put a little bit back on. The way I did it wasn't the healthiest, but even still, I make much healthier choices as far as that. So if I just limp around with a gimp knee, I can take just putting my knee brace on right now when I don't have the health insurance. But yeah, there's obviously stuff I would like to get checked out and fixed once I get into a little bit better financial aspect of life.
All right.
I don't know if therapy is ever something I would want to do, but it feels like it'd probably be smart for me to do it, even if it's for a little while.
Yeah,
like
yes,
I understand. I know the things that need to be done. It's just I'm not at the point where they can be done yet, but I am fully aware that they need to be done at some point.
Okay. How about this? How about this is just for me, because hearing all this from the perspective I'm coming from, and I'll explain maybe that a little bit more in a minute, but I'm like, oh my God, like, please take care of your health when you're able to. So would you make a promise just to make me feel better, and if you don't keep it, that's fine. But would you just say that those things that you're aware that you should do, whether it's therapy or doctor's visits or that kind of thing, that when you're able to do it, you will.
Oh yeah, it's that'll happen.
Say I want to hear you say, I promise.
I promise. I'll even peek you promise over the internet. Trust me, I would like it if I had my knees fixed to the point where I get out of bed every morning. It doesn't hurt to stand up.
So I want the whole sentence. I promise when I'm able to take care of my health, I will.
I'll take care of my health. I will.
All right, good. I feel better, guys. I feel a little warm and fuzzy feeling in my heart right now. It feels good.
Oh goodness, it's even rougher because this is another whole psychology thing, especially what you're talking about, not wanting to go down the same path. My dad did have a little bit of an addiction tendency when it came to like pain medicine. Alcohol was his thing of choice. Percocet, Jack Daniels, depending on the day or whatever it is. He had a really high tolerance, so it's not like it would knock him out or anything. But like And that's some of the vices that I was talking about him choosing over us. I've had it for probably the last 4 years. Resign, just steadfast. I don't know if I'm choosing the right words in my head. Like, I'm never gonna go down that route. Like, it would be, I would be so much more comfortable in life if I could just take, a few Advil a day, and at least take the edge off of the knees or the hips or whatever. Because I feel like if the physical pain was a little bit less, it'd at least make the mental a little bit more. It feels like I'm getting pulled from both ends basically. But I'm so scared because I know people do say addiction is hereditary, like the addiction tendency for stuff, and I've kind of felt twinges of it when I was younger, and I'm just so scared to do anything like painkiller wise to help with the pain or whatever. So I think that's part of where just trying to turn everything off was at I decided at that point, like, I'm not going to take anything for the pain. I'll just muscle through it. I think that's the right term.
Okay, so
Because I'm just so scared of falling down that point. So
yes,
that would probably be therapy talk too.
okay, I 100% understand that mindset, because not even that long ago in my life, I have been there and employed that mindset, and I guess what I want to ask is, are you ready to go down another emotional rabbit hole
Dude,
of
we're on mental health and injury
yeah.
for maybe 2 hours. Who knows?
Well, because
Only the real ones are listening at this point. So we're just having a nice conversation between ourselves. Let's go down it.
oh, here's the thing. This is the trick of this podcast. We do the fight talk to kind of like weed out the people who aren't true fans and true followers, and then we get to the actual like real like good stuff at the end, and that's only for the diehards that stuck around. So they get the good stuff. That's the secret of our podcast so far. But I guess basically, one, I've been advocating, oh, you've got to go to doctors, but I'm more aware than I think most of the pitfalls that you can fall into if you're just going to doctors and blindly listening to what they say. And I also know what happens if you don't take care of your health when you have the means, because I think I'm probably suffering some of the repercussions, and I still don't know how or why, but I've been trying to figure it out. So are you ready for this? I mean, I don't know. From my perspective, it's not quite as emotional as your story, but who knows? It's maybe that's just because I was the one in the middle of it.
Oh yeah, it's Aaron's time now.
Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Aaron. We're going to do a quick cut here because I rambled for about 25 minutes setting up the story I'm about to tell. Here's the important information you need. One, I had a bunch of injuries growing up and learned I could kind of just ignore pain. And through a strange series of events, I ended up being a assistant women's college lacrosse coach in a small school in Ohio, as you do. And this is where the story starts. The last important part of the story is I was working tons of hours, was dead broke when this happens, and like AJ in the previous story, had been ignoring my health, thinking I could just push through it and didn't have time, and had a terrible tooth infection in one of my wisdom teeth that I was telling myself over and over I would get taken care of in the future. And this story picks up after I'd been at the school for 3 years. I had been promoted to the college video coordinator and had my own fancy office, and was looking to leave the school after some friction and tension with the head coach and a very, very stressful season. It's the summer. Everyone's gone. There's a lot of pressure off. There's not as many people on campus. And it was me, the head coach, and one of the players up in my office, which was crazy. I told you I became the video coordinator of the school. So I actually managed to finagle this like big, beautiful office for myself, which was funny because the head coach had this little office that actually didn't have any windows or anything like that. And meanwhile, I've got these big 10-foot high windows and this couch and myself, and then I guess I don't remember who it was. One of the players who hadn't left for the summer yet. We're just hanging out, chilling in the office. And I don't remember what we were talking about. I just remember feeling like everything felt good. It felt It felt like relaxed. Like, where there's like that calm before the storm when everything in your life's turbulent and all of a sudden there's just that one moment where you're like, this feels peaceful.
Oh yeah.
That's what it felt like. And then it was sunny outside and it was beautiful. And I was pretty happy. Like the reason he negged me was because I had applied to a school where he thought I was too good for them. And he did not want to see me take that job because he thought I could do better. And then, flash forward, all of a sudden I'm having all these trouble even getting interviews. But that day when we're all hanging out, it was actually right before I was supposed to leave in like 2 or 3 hours to drive to New York for another interview. And it was just, opportunity that he was excited for me and I was excited. And I was like, this could be great. Like this will be the school that I end up going to. And it was a beautiful campus and, it's overlooking this river in New York. It was great, right? Just happy. Like you can kind of picture this after all the stress that I've alluded to in the previous season. And then all of a sudden we get a text message from one of the players. It was informing us that a former player who had left the team under sort of bad terms had died. She was killed that morning in a car accident. At 3 a.m. Drunk driver hit her, and it was weird. Just all the drama and like it's even now talking about just saying it like I can feel all that drama and stress and everything pent up just kind of like came crashing down, and I'm I'm sitting there like, oh my god, like I have to go to a job interview. I don't even care anymore. I don't want to go to this interview. Like, and I just wanted to stay there and just be around there for anybody, on the team who was grieving. And I just didn't even want to. I didn't even want to do any of the coaching stuff. And they're like, no, you have to go to the interview. Like, just go. You're gonna regret it if you don't. So I go through the interview and I basically just sort of sleepwalk through the whole thing. I mean, at that point, I had been through enough of them where I just almost had my prepared responses. And I'm just saying, I can't even remember any of it. I remember the campus looked pretty and just giving the canned responses and just not giving a shit whether I got the job or not. And I drove, just to give you the sort of the timetable, was I drove from Ohio to New York, so that would have been on a Sunday. I drove from Ohio to New York on a Sunday, and then I had this interview that I just don't give a shit about and leave in New York on Monday. And then I drive back to Ohio, get there Tuesday, and I'm in Ohio a day. And I was supposed to, at this point, I was supposed to go to a recruiting tournament in Chicago on, maybe I messed up the timeline. I know I was supposed to go to the, so the interview was Wednesday. I'm sorry, this happened Tuesday. So I drove, Tuesday I drive to New York. I drive back to Ohio Thursday. I drive to Chicago for this recruiting tournament Friday. And the only reason I went was because my cousin, and I don't have a lot of close family, but a cousin was having a wedding in Wisconsin Saturday, and I'm like, well, I might as well go to this recruiting tournament. And at this point, that kind of numb feeling, that's sort of how I felt. I felt like I'm trying to,
like an autopilot was on.
It's not even autopilot. I felt like I was those sequences, and I can't remember what movie or show I've seen this where somebody's dead and they're like a ghost in the world and they're floating through the world and everything's in black and white and nothing smells the way it should or tastes the way it should and all the sounds are sort of hollow. I mean, again, it was just a buildup of a lot of pressure and so I'm gonna I didn't think I was gonna go into this much, but why not? At that point, I'm just I wanted to snap out of it. I wanted to get some sort of emotion going because I just felt numb to everything. So my first thought was why don't I go and just get into a bar fight? Like something will happen. And because by the way, the coach I work for, I had broken up multiple bar fights that he attempted to start before they happened. And that's, you know what, and I think one of them, remind me, I'll save that story for another podcast. But instead, I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I can't get arrested in a bar fight before my cousin's wedding and not show up. Like that's not okay. And then I don't know why this popped in my head, but I was like, yo, I'm gonna get an escort. Like that will make me feel something. That was a first time thought for me, but for whatever reason at the time it seemed like a good idea. And apparently that was way easier than I thought, because I I got an escort to come meet me at a it was like, or I think she had a hotel that she was working out of, and I go there and I did not know what to do. I don't really understand. I didn't understand how that interaction was supposed to start. Just like so you have like a rough day on the job. Like was it a tough shift before? I don't know what the fuck you're supposed to say to an escort, right?
Yeah.
And
it took a turn I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting. I was thinking more health, but man, like I told you, man, it was gonna be an emotional rabbit hole.
Imagine someone who's hung on this long and they're like that they finally hear, oh, there's an escort involved.
Yeah, there was an escort involved, and this whole I guess it had been 3.5 years at this point. I've been working with female athletes, and I defaulted to how I usually initiated conversations with females at that point, which was like my whole recruiting thing, which is just asking them questions about themselves, getting to know who they were, trying to connect with them on an emotional level, just to find out if they would be a good fit for the school. So like I just start asking her questions about herself and basically trying to figure out how to help her, because that was the way I approached every recruiting call. It was like, how can I help this person reach their goals, and what they want to achieve in life. And I would try my best to figure out how to help them reach their goals by then coming to our school. And sometimes it wasn't it. Sometimes it was, oh, wow, I can't help you become the person you want to be by coming to the school. So I will connect you with this other coach that I think can do that. Or I will try to point you, and it was weird. It was kind of an unorthodox way of doing it. But what I learned in the long run is like, if you're not a dick and you treat women good, like they talk, like, yeah, maybe this kid isn't right, but they have a teammate, or at the very least, like you get a good reputation of not being a coach who's just trying to, take advantage of players.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm asking this escort like all these questions and trying to figure out how I can help her, because I just don't know what the hell to say. So I find out that she's originally from Georgia, and there was she was fleeing a broken home, and she just had to get her and her sister out of that, and they ended up in Chicago. And I was like, well, you got your sister out of this with you? And she's like, yeah, she's in the hotel. She's just in another room. And I'm like, oh. And that's where suddenly, I don't know, that whole thing sort of changed for me. And I was like, I gotta go. Like, here's the money I was supposed to pay you. I'm sorry, I'm not rich. I'd give you more. Here's $100 extra. I have to get to a wedding in Wisconsin. I'm like, what? That was where somehow like reality just sort of snapped back into place. I'm like, all right, like I'm part of the world again. I suddenly, this wasn't how I thought I would feel and empathize and not be numb, but okay, it worked. Fuck it, I'm getting out of here. Because man, that whole thing just took depressing to a whole nother level. So I go to Wisconsin, and I'm there for the wedding. So just to track, I've gone Wednesday New York, Thursday back to Ohio, Friday to Chicago, Saturday to Wisconsin, and then I'm sitting at the wedding, and it's really happy, and it's like the relatives are happy, and my cousin who is what is she? I think she's a year or two younger than me, is getting married, and I'm just thinking about my family, and I'm like, man, she's getting married and starting a family, and or how our grandmother who died 2 years ago would have been so proud for her, and like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And then I don't know why I was just like, I have to go. I mean, the funeral and services are back in Ohio on Sunday. I'm like, I'm gonna go. I mean, maybe I'm done coaching forever now. But this is gonna, if it's the last thing I do as a coach, I just want to be there at that funeral. And so I kind of say my goodbyes at the wedding Saturday night, and I just drive through the entire night from Wisconsin. I mean, I don't know how I didn't drive my car into a telephone pole, but drive all the way back, and I get there for the funeral, and I don't really know what I did. I'm just sort of there, and I had this moment where, like, the services are over, and everyone's sort of milling around, not sure what to do after. And it was like, kind of like I said, and that's when you said that moment that you felt. That was immediately what I thought of, where I just felt like everything was heavier. It felt like there was just like a weight vest just covering my whole body. Like, it was so hard to stand up and move. And still have the toothache. And that moment passes, and I just sit down. And I guess the one good thing that I kind of did with for a few of the players, like, we just started talking about some of the good memories we had of that player, and I was doing it kind of. You can probably imagine this, like, especially hearing me talk about Elias, where I'm like low key roasting her, but also talking about her very flatteringly, because I don't know, the kid was kind of a brat. It wasn't for nothing that she left the team on bad terms, but I don't know. We're just sort of like laughing her, like, not laughing at her. We're like laughing, like, remembering a lot of the good things she did, and the positive parts of her on the team. And I was like, all right, I think that's what I was supposed to do. And I was real broken up. I felt terrible, and I'm thinking, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. I had another interview on Tuesday, and I just don't even know what to do in life. And I get a call that Monday from that job that I just sleepwalked through, that saying, we want to hire you. And I was shocked. I was like, I can't, how out of all these jobs where I just did an amazing job on the interview, is this the one that's going to hire me? And I tell the guy, hey, like, a lot has happened this week. I mean, I just got back from this funeral. And just full disclosure, there was another interview that I'm supposed to go to tomorrow. I don't even know if I'm going to go. Can you just give me till Friday to kind of sort out my emotions? And he's like, yeah, you can have till Friday. And I'm just trying to figure it out. And I go to this other interview, and it's just depressing. It's in this, like, small town in Ohio. I'm like, I can't work here. I don't even know if I know I want to be a coach. And, like, I'm thinking through. I literally, for my first time in my life, I go to, what the hell was he? Was he a minister, or he was the religious figure at the school that I worked at. He was like a minister or a pastor. He wasn't. I don't think he was a priest. And just sort of talk to him about life. I've never been religious, but, like, I just felt like I needed to, in light of everything that had happened. And then I finally decided, I'm like, you know what? I want to make one more shot. I want to have that opportunity to be a head coach and see if I can do it. I mean, I kind of realized that wasn't fully emotionally cut out. Like, there are some men who can be really effective coaches for women. I was like, I don't think I have all the emotional and communicative tools to do that, but fuck it. Let me find out, And I call that school back on Monday and say, like, yeah, I'm going to take the job. And the athletic director's like, well, we gave it to somebody else.
Oof.
Yeah. And at that point, it was, oh my God, I was devastated. It was like this crazy emotional roller coaster. I mean, didn't know what to do. And I literally call my parents, and I'm like, they're out here in Colorado where I live. I was like, I'm done. Can't do this anymore. It's too much. I'm like, I was like, so I'm gonna just get my car. I'm gonna drive to North Dakota and get a Class C trucking license, and I'm just gonna do
There you go.
that for a couple of
That'll solve
years.
all the problems.
And I'm like, I hear you make a lot of money. It's kind of a wild scene out there. I'm just gonna do that, and if that doesn't pan out, I'm just gonna keep going to Alaska, and then I'll get there's like some sort of commercial fishing work or something. I don't know. I'm probably gonna end up in Alaska. I think that's where I should go now. And they're like, they know me, and they know at that point they'd learned that it's just not worth trying to talk me out of anything because that'll probably make me want to do it more. And they're like, that's fine. You can go to Alaska and work on a commercial fishing boat, but just come out to Denver for 2 days and just take a breather. Um, it's fine. Like, and then we'll help you get to Alaska, but just will you come out to 2 days? I'm like, fine, no problem. So they played for the plane ticket. That was how they got me to come.
That was the major influence.
Exactly. And so I'm in the airport, just having landed in Denver, and then I get a call from a school back in Pennsylvania, which out of all the schools I'd applied to, um, that for that round of applications, if I could have picked one, that would have been it. And I was surprised because I thought they'd hired someone already, and so I was shocked when I heard. And the athletic director was like, "Yeah, we need you to come in for an interview Monday." And I'm like, well, I'm in Colorado right now. He's like, okay, we need to get somebody in here quick, so if you can't come, we're just gonna have to move on. I'm like, no, I can come.
Oh, was Skype not a thing then?
No, so I basically get to Denver. I spend a day in Denver instead of 2 days. Hop back on a plane, go to get to Ohio, and then drive all through the night. I remember I stopped at a hotel halfway, no, a little bit more than halfway through. Got 3 hours of sleep and show up at this interview having gone through this whole emotional roller coaster of the death, the job interview, the escort, the funeral, the wedding, the turn down interview, the thinking I'm done coaching forever, and then show up on this interview on 3 hours of sleep. And I remember just thinking like, why am I even here? This is going to be a complete train wreck. But I don't know why. I just decided I'm going to do everything I can to make this the best. Like, this is literally my last shot. If this doesn't work out, fuck it, I'm done. So I might as well do the best I can. And then, I don't know. Have you ever had one of those moments in your life where everything just, it seems like all the puzzle pieces just click together in a weird way you never thought possible?
Oh, nope.
Well, maybe you're young. It didn't happen to me until when I don't remember. I must have just been 30 when I had that interview. So maybe it's coming for you, but like it was crazy. Like every answer or question they asked, I just knew the perfect answer. And I'm like joking with the track coach about like running for him, and it was just this one specific thing that he brought up that my friend from the last school who was the track coach had taught me about. So like I just blew him out of the water because I knew that. And then I knew the small town that the softball coach had come from, and like everything. It was weird. And somehow I wasn't even tired, and I was answering every question perfectly. And I remember leaving that interview being like, I'm probably not going to get it, like, but I feel good. I did everything like as well as I could have. This I can leave coaching happy, and I mean that's it. It felt like a good sort of like I'd given my best shot, and it was time to move on, and they'd made it seem like it was a big hurry, and I kind of waited around for a while. I think I was just sort of treading water in Ohio for, I think it was like 3 weeks, just making sure. And then I was like, all right, well, I didn't get it. I'm just getting ready to move on. The summer is almost over. It was just the very end of August, and then I get a call from him, and that school's like, hey, we want to hire you. Like, holy shit, this is crazy. I still have the toothache. Like, I'm really physically worn down and emotionally worn down at this point. But I don't know. I had that whole thing kind of like you were saying, like, well, you can just keep pushing through it. Like, you can just push through a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, feel free to stop me and if you have any questions about any part of this.
Well, I got my turn to put it all out, so I was giving you the
Well,
full ability to
it goes on for
podcast therapy.
I haven't even really got to the health part, like the real bad health part. So do you have follow ups for that? Because I don't want to.
I don't even know. There was so much. There was a hooker. There was a death. There was like 16 job interviews.
Yeah,
It was
that
a
all
lot to
happened.
keep up with.
All right. Well, should I just
I
keep
feel like
going then?
so bad, but it was just so much, and I was trying to keep track of all the storylines.
Yeah, it was all kind of one continuous storyline in a way, I guess.
It was the
Um,
pop up things that threw me, like, oh, and then I decided to get a hooker, and then I decided to be a truck driver, and then I decided blah, and I was like, good grief, Aaron,
yeah, no, it's
this
crazy,
is not
man.
the direction I was expecting.
So that's what I'm saying. Just jump in and stop me if something comes up, because it's a long and winding tale, and I'm gonna try to skip through a lot of it. But yeah, it's pretty nuts. So anyhow, I take that job. And like I remember, for a while, I was so excited when I started. I'm like, this is crazy. Like I never thought I'd be able to go to a job, a job this good as my first head coaching job. And it was a school where I thought there was a lot of positives at the school. I'm like, I can sell this place. Like this is great, and I take over, and very quickly I learned that the team's completely dysfunctional. They had all staged a coup and gotten their previous coach fired. The athletic director just didn't give a shit about life anymore because a new president had taken over, and he was basically had been fired, and they were just letting him stick around long enough to to find a new job. And that I don't want to go through all of it. I mean, that whole fall, that was probably the most stress I've been under my entire life. Like, I'm trying to turn this program around. I'm still working just crazy hours. I mean, my usual day was from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m. Just straight through. I was definitely forgetting to eat a lot. I'm trying to think of like the highlight stressful moments. There was the one where I'd been there for 3 weeks and HR calls me in and they're like, "Did you lie about having a master's degree?" And I'm like, "No." They're like, "Well, we can't get verification that you have a master's degree, and we're just gonna have to go in another direction if you don't." I'm like, "No, I do." And there's this, and it turns out that it was just I had a $2,000 outstanding balance with the university I got my degree, and they just weren't releasing any of the information. And then I'm like scrambling, trying to like make call because I didn't have money. They didn't pay for relocation, and I'm like trying to figure out how I can come up with $2,000 so I don't get booted from my
Should have called that
job.
hooker back and asked her for a refund.
Yeah, that I did not. I wish I had enough money to even pay a that high class of an escort. This was someone I found on Craigslist in Chicago. This wasn't like a fancy condo in New York where I was shelling out millions. I'm not the hell was that politician? What was his name?
Dude, I don't know politics. I thought you were
Uh,
going American Psycho direction.
oh, him too. No, it wasn't. It was not Patrick Bateman, rich. So anyhow, and out of there were multiple crazy things, and out of respect to the people on the team, in case anyone ever pieces together who it was, I'm not gonna really get into it too much, but it was nuts. And this whole time, starting to have a harder and harder time sleeping. Getting more and more stressed. The tooth is starting to hurt more and more. I'm like just clenching my jaw like every second of the day, and just getting more and more worn down physically because I'm barely sleeping. And speaking of diet, my diet was terrible. I've always had a little bit of a sweet tooth, but at that point, like I remember I'd just be so stressed that I would come home and stop at the grocery store, and like those big like tubs of just shitty grocery store cookies.
Oh yeah,
I would just buy one of those and eat the whole thing. Just one sitting, just eat all of them.
that's the American dream.
Yeah. Uh, so this is all happening, and like I'm starting to get these headaches like more and more often. I'd been getting even a few of them that last spring that I was at the last college from I think from stress, but now they're happening more often. I'm getting them like 3 times a week, and I'm taking those migraine Tylenols, and they go away. And it finally gets to the point where the tooth gets infected again. And it hurts so bad where I have to get this thing out. So I finally, and I have no excuse now. I've got like one of the best health insurance, probably the best health insurance policy I've ever had, because that was the one smart thing I did starting at school. I was like, I'm gonna get the absolute top plan, and it was amazing. It paid for everything. I didn't have to pay money for prescriptions. I rarely had co-pays. I mean, dental stuff was free. I had no excuse. I'm like, I'm being an idiot. So I just kind of on a whim, I call a dentist office, and they're like, oh, we can actually get you in today to take a look at it. And I go in, and the dentist looks at it, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is real bad, man. Like, I have time. Like, we can do the surgery to get it out right now. Can you do that?" And this is kind of why I related to your "I'm going to be a burden" thinking. I mean, this was, I think, a little bit. I don't want to say more selfish, maybe stupider. In my mind, I'm like, I don't have time to do this right now. Like, I was trying to do 3 separate people's jobs. I'm like, I don't have time to take a couple days off because I'm getting an infected wisdom tooth pulled out. I don't even have time to make this appointment during the day because every second of my day I was trying to do something to pull this dysfunctional program out of the gutter. But God, I don't want to get into it, but man, if if you've never dealt with a entire team of college age women who are just trying to find different angles to tear something apart, and you're trying to hold it together, that's just a new level of psychological stress. But again, I won't get too into that. So when the doctor's like, this dentist is like, I'll pull it out. I'm like, okay, fine, let's do it. Let's pull it out. So he gives me the laughing gas, nitrous oxide. Have you ever had that stuff?
I've had it not work on me, and that created my phobia of dentist.
What do you mean it didn't work on you?
I had a runny nose that day because I was slightly upset about the procedure, and I couldn't breathe in enough of the gas. So the doctor said, "Fuck it," and just decided to the needles they stick in your gums after you're numbed up from the gas.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to say, "Fuck it," covered my eyes with one hand, and then just jammed the needle in my gums. Felt every single ounce of that.
Got it.
Yeah, that was my fun for it not really working for me. He didn't stop and think like, "Oh, blow your nose, maybe that'll help." Like, dude, I was just scared. You're pulling teeth out. I just have the sniffles from that.
Well,
So
I've had it twice. I remember I had it once when I was younger, and I was getting some sort of dental surgery. I mean, like really, like probably like 11 or 12. And I had a legit out of body experience. Like I felt like I was floating at the ceiling of the room, looking down upon myself. And then it definitely had an effect on me. And the reason they give it to you is it's supposed to relax you.
Yeah.
And so I've got the taking the mask on, and you're starting to poke around in my mouth. I'm just high as a kite. And then I suddenly remember, oh, I'm supposed to have a meeting in 3 hours with the assistant athletic director in charge of compliance, who was a complete battle axe of a woman. I actually developed a good relationship with her later on. It took me a while, but I was like, oh, she has Asperger's. She's just much older, and it went undiagnosed. But like everything had to be in a certain place in her office, and if she's like, well, you have to have this form filled out this way with this color ink, and I'm like, yeah, but I just didn't have a color pen. It has to be blue ink, And it was that kind of thing where, like, if everything wasn't exactly the way she wanted, she would just freak out. And I just remember being so... She was another huge level of stress that first year. And then as soon as I was like, oh, she's got Asperger's, I just started relating to her like I would with somebody who has Asperger's. And then she liked me. Because I just wouldn't put her in situations where she was uncomfortable. But at that point, I didn't know that. I'm having a legit panic attack. I'm like, I'm going to show up to work high with this crazy woman who hates me, and I'm going to get fired. And I just start having a panic attack in the chair, and like I had that feeling of like being trapped because I'm like stuck in this dentist chair. And I remember the internal monologue was like, just punch this dentist in the face as hard as you can and escape. No, don't punch the dentist in the face. Punch him in the face as hard as you can and escape. Do not do it. And like, this is going on. I'm just getting tenser and tenser. Like every muscle in my body is just straining to, basically fighting against itself to not punch this dentist as hard as I can in the face. And like, it's not helping that he can't get the tooth out. Like he's just like yanking on it. He's basically like a pry bar, and he's using my lower jaw as the fulcrum to try to pry and yank this thing out. And he finally gets it out, and I'm still kind of panicked. I'm like just trying to I just make my way out. I just remember I just sat in the car outside the dentist office for an hour, just panic, trying to like slow my heartbeat down. And I more or less got it together enough where where I didn't get fired in the meeting with the compliance director. And I go home. And I go to sleep, like go home earlier. I mean, when I say earlier, I probably went to home at 6 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. And I go to sleep, and I wake up the next day, and I have a headache. And that headache did not go away when was that? December 2012. And now we're in May 2019, and it has been one steady headache from that day till this day that will just vary in intensity. It's pretty nuts, huh?
Jesus. That is my headache records.
So, and this is where, like, I guess this is sort of a medical cautionary tale, because it gets worse from here. And this is where it's like I feel like it's really important to go to doctors, but also just not take what they say without questioning it. Because at this point, I was under two assumptions. That one, you should just listen to your doctor and not be a problem patient that tries to get involved too much. And two, we have the best medical system in the world, and if you just do what the doctors say, you'll get better. Those were two assumptions. Those were two things I believed at that time, and I have since learned are false assumptions. So I actually, to my credit, I did try to go to two doctors to get better. Before this happened, I went to one doctor. The first doctor I went to, kind of tell him what's been going on. He's like, well, I haven't been sleeping a lot. I've got this headache. He's like, yeah, I just don't think you've been sleeping enough. You need you to get better sleep, and this should kind of work itself out. I'm going to write you a prescription so you can sleep. I want you to take one trazodone every night. Are you familiar with trazodone?
No, dude, me and any type of drugs, I just have no idea whatsoever.
Did you ever see the movie Silver Linings Playbook?
Yeah, I legitimately just watched that like last week.
So do you remember the scene where like they're comparing the meds they take, and Bradley Cooper's like, "Oh yeah, I take that one too. It makes you dead and numb to the world." You remember that?
Yeah, I kind of remember that.
That's trazodone. Okay. So like I take it for like I think I took it for a week, and it wasn't really helping me. And yeah, it's like makes you just feel crazy groggy and like out of touch with what's going on. And I was like, I have to go to a different doctor. And like this is nuts. And one to me, the fact, and this is something that happens regularly. I mean, you hear a lot about the opioid epidemic, but you have all these doctors prescribing shit that people do not need. Like, if someone's having trouble sleeping, your first step should not be to go to like a heavy antipsychotic medication that numbs you to the entire world. Like, that's insane. And
Yeah,
there's
maybe go walk 2 miles a day.
yeah,
That should be like step one.
yeah, so to my credit, I actually at least had enough sense to stop taking that. I started doing yoga for the first time in my life. Got a lot more flexible. Some of the aches and pains were kind of working themselves out. And oh, Jesus, I forgot. Dang, I forgot the crazy most stressful part of that whole thing earlier, which actually came to head. I have to add this in because it was just funny. So I mentioned part of the reason I wasn't going to dentist appointments was even though I had the healthcare, I just didn't have a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And the only place I had been able to find to live because they hired me late was this like kind of dilapidated A-frame cottage out in the woods, and it just wasn't made for long-term habitation. So during the fall when it was warm, it was fine, but once it started getting cold, there wasn't very good insulation, and the only heating was this like propane heater, which is like a really wet heat, and there was zero ventilation. So all this white mold started forming, like just forming everywhere. And I'm telling like the landlord, like it can't be healthy to live in. There's mold all over the place I'm living. He's like, just wipe it off. It's fine. Like, don't worry. And dude, I do remember one night where I was so tired and I'm just kind of freaking out because I didn't feel like I could breathe. Like, I didn't feel like it was safe to breathe the air. I'm like, I don't know if there's like a propane leak and that's gonna get me or the mold's gonna get me. And I was feeling like I'm so tired. I'm just gonna roll the dice, and if I don't wake up, it just is what it is. Like, I have to go to sleep. But so like once all the headache stuff started, I was like, okay, I did get out of that place. I found a different place to live. I started going to yoga. So I didn't keep taking the trays. I went to a doctor who was like, well, one, you've got this like terrible sinus infection, probably because I've been living in this place with all this mold and dust and no ventilation. He's like, we're gonna give you some steroids to try to make that better. And yeah, your muscles are like just completely locked up. I'm gonna give you some muscle relaxers, and see if that can help. And then come back in a couple months. And unfortunately, like, and I think you'll relate to this. Like, once a couple months jumped in, or at the point where he said you should come back was right in the middle of the season, and I had this mindset. I'm like, I can't. I don't have time right now. I can't. I'm just gonna get through the season, and then I'll deal with this.
Yeah. Anytime I hear, "Oh, you should come back," but I go, "I'm never fucking coming back here."
Well, and I came back to
your own credit.
I guess. I mean, I can't. I did come back, but I just kind of willed my way through the season, and I had a headache, and everything's getting kind of progressively worse. Like, it went from just being a headache to then like my neck, like all the muscles in my neck just being permanently locked up in this muscle spasm, and then to my shoulders. And by the time I went back, I'm just a complete mess. And their answer was like, okay, well, let's try a stronger muscle relaxer, and then a stronger muscle relaxer. And over the summer, I really did try to work on this pretty diligently. At that point, I was like, well, I have health insurance. I've got the time. I went to a chiropractor because I thought that's what you're supposed to do when your neck's messed up. And he's chiropracting me. I went to physical therapy. I'm not getting better. And I worked real diligently for that whole 3 months trying to get healthy. And then and then the fall rolls around. I'm like, I don't have time for this again. And I made the biggest mistake I think I could have ever made, and I think a lot of people end up making for their health. I just wanted an answer. Like, I had a headache for I think like 9 months at this point, and now everything's locked up. And it was bad. It was real bad. I mean, I remember, to the point where like I just need to get this under control. So I went to a pain management clinic.
Yeah.
Do you know what those are?
Aren't they basically just pill farms?
Pills and injections. And so basically, exactly, they're going to try to give you, pills to numb the pain, and they're going to try to give you injections or like nerve blocks or things that'll just block out the pain. And I started doing that, and it's like I did temporarily feel better, but meanwhile, it's just because I couldn't feel it. So like all my muscles are getting locked up even worse. Everything's getting tighter and tighter. And I remember to the point where like I started doing crazy shit just to try to make it through the day. I think midway through that fall, I started wearing a TENS unit. Do you know what those are?
Oh, I love them.
Can you explain for
I've got a
the?
drawer full of them. Can I explain it to people?
Yeah.
Yeah, the best way to explain it, it's basically shock therapy would be the dumbest way to say it. It's this little control unit. You plug, it depends on what your unit is. You plug 2 to 4 wires into it, and at the very end of those are some electrode pads that you put on, and you stick those on. Say your quad hurts, you stick them where you're sore in your quad, and then depending on what unit you have, some of them have like pre-made programs you can use, or some of them are just literally just on off. Power 1 to 10, and it will shock you at different rates, and it can help tighten or loosen the muscle up. But basically, I probably don't use it right, but when I'm sore, like if my quads are sore, I'll just put it on that and I'll just turn it up, and I usually set mine at like just a mild thud of like one hit every second basically, and wear them for 20-30 minutes and then take them off. Usually the muscle, whatever it is, starts to feel a lot more loosened up. And there's something, a lot of physical therapists and chiropractor people are usually the ones who give them out to people, and it's just another recovery tool you can use.
Yeah, perfect explanation. And I kind of figured out this cross pattern where if I put two of the electrodes, one on one shoulder blade and one on the other, and then two more, one at the top of my spine and one at the base of my spine, and I turned that on, it would kind of, when it was on, it would sort of relax things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was just leaving those on for about 7 or 8 hours at a time.
Yeah, totally normal, right?
Yeah, and basic behavior. And this whole time I'm going to this pain management, and they're like, well, let's try a facet injection, which basically they inject so the facet, it's basically the space in between your joints that have these little nerve endings, and the joints in your spine, so like in your neck. So they're basically injecting, trying to deaden the nerves, in between the vertebrae.
Yeah.
So I don't feel the pain in my neck. And they're like, well, that's not working. Let's try. And every time I would think it would work because they were also pumping me with tons of anesthetic. And I realize now, I would feel better because when you pump a ton of anesthetic into someone's neck, then it doesn't hurt. And I tell them, I felt better for a while, but it wore off. They're like, okay, well, let's just try to go in and cauterize the nerve. Basically burn the nerve so it dies, so then I just won't feel the pain. And then that wasn't working. So they're like, okay, let's try... let's try an epidural where we go and we just inject like a steroid into your spine. Okay, that didn't really work. And like meanwhile, I'm getting worse and worse, and everything's getting tighter and tighter. And once again, it's approaching the season. I had this thing of like, we have to get through the season. You've got to get me through the season. I can't. This isn't working. The only thing that's worked is, and it's temporarily, but like when I took muscle relaxers, I felt better. So I convinced them to let me go on Valium for 3 months.
Well, there you go.
And when I did, my muscles would relax, and I would feel better when I was on Valium. And they're telling me like, look, it's physiologically addictive. It's not even just the mental part. Like your body will become addicted to this. And I tell them like, no, I will stop as soon as the season's over. I just need to get through the season. And they're like, okay, so one, you also have to try this other medication. And it was called, what the hell was it called? I don't remember. It was something. It was Neurontin. It was something that neurologists prescribed to just. I don't even know what it was supposed to do. It just made me feel like sluggish and dead to the world. It's like you have to do that, and you have to keep coming back to see us so we can monitor you, and then we'll give you Valium. So like I'm like fine, whatever. I just need to get through the season. And that was my mindset. I'm like I can push through anything. Doesn't matter how bad this hurts. I can push through anything for 3 months. I'll get through it and then I'll deal with it then. And slowly this whole time the players who are already a difficult bunch to deal with are starting to hate me a little bit, which in retrospect, I can understand because I can be a little bit of a dick to begin with. And then, I mean, at this point, I'm in so much pain where it was like just talking hurt because the muscles in my jaw were locked up. So it was
Yeah.
hard. It was physically hard to open my mouth more than about a knuckles width. So, like, when they wanted me to speak more loudly and I had to repeat myself, or I had to repeat myself because they weren't listening, like, I would get visibly upset and frustrated with them. And it was a dysfunctional team and they weren't winning. And I'm like, I'm just irritable. And they didn't entirely know why. I kind of said offhand, like, yeah, I'm having some health issues, but I don't think I told anyone to the depth that it was true. But I'm just in so much pain all the time, just with no break from it. There's no position. It wasn't like my knee hurt and I could like lie down and rest it. Everything hurt all the time, nonstop. And the only break it felt like I got was when I took Valium, from when the effects of the Valium started to when it stopped. So that's sort of just what I'm doing with the season. And I'm taking Valium and I'm just spaced out and don't really know what's going on. There's definitely like tension with the team. It's not working. I'm not getting better. And two things happened that really brought it to a head for me. The first thing was I'm still going to this pain management clinic like they told me to, and they're saying, well, we're not getting the results we want, and you've got a lot of inflammation in your body. We want to give you, I think it was called a Metarol dose pack, which basically means it's just this like 7-day pack of steroids that you take that are anti-inflammatory, because steroids at their core are anti-inflammatories. So they wanted to just take this steroid pack, knock out the inflammation, and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm gonna get. I feel like anyone listening at this point could figure this out on their own, but I'm just gonna put this out there. If you're taking a lot of Valium and your body gets used to that to the point where you're physiologically addicted, then immediately introducing steroids is not a great idea. So like,
what could go wrong?
Things are already really, really tense with the team just because they're a fucking pain in the ass, and my ability to tolerate that, was just minimal at this point. And on top of that, I'm freaking doped up on Valium. Like, my ability to think and be a good coach was severely compromised. So like, I get it. I understand that whole thing was a terrible recipe for things to blow up, and it definitely did. It blew up on. I was like, we had a road trip. I'm taking this team, and I'm taking the dose pack like they told me, and I'm just on edge. Like, sitting on a bus is just incredibly painful. I mean, at that point, it had sort of evolved from headaches to these head, neck, and shoulder, just like violent muscle spasms, and just sitting was like the worst trigger. So I just have to sit on a bus seat while they're just making noise and talking and having like boisterous conversations for, I think it was a 4-hour trip, while I'm just having these violent muscle spasms for 4 hours straight. And
That sounds pleasant.
it was just a special level of hell. And then it's like we get there and there's just the regular drama and bullshit. And I remember the point where like they just all suddenly decided they hated me is we're midway. I actually like get them to the game and it's not going well, and
You cut out for a second.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Now I can, yeah.
Yeah, I just said the point where like everything just kind of did blow up, where it was we get to I actually somehow managed to like make it to the game, and it's not going well, and we're just hanging on and slightly behind a team that we should beat, and one of the players who's particularly difficult to deal with scores her 100th goal.
You keep going in and out.
I keep hearing like some. It sounds like the Skype connection is ringing. That's weird.
I think it must be on your end because mine. I just stop hearing words from you, and then it just comes back you mid sentence.
Let's try one more time, and if it happens again, we could just restart the call.
Okay, we're at 3 hours now, so we're close anyway.
Holy shit! Sorry, I didn't think this was going to be this whole. I did not plan to go into this great detail, but then I started telling the story. I'm like, well, I don't know how I get to this end part without going through the rest of it. I didn't mean to get into this much of it. I'll try to wrap it up. I mean, I have skipped pretty large sections of it.
That's fine. I just have to cook dinner after I'm done here.
All right.
Mother's Day dinner.
I'll try to wrap it up and then let you ask some questions, and then we'll call it a podcast. But basically, I just one of the players who was real difficult to deal with scored her 100th goal, and just in the flow of the game, I had to take her out. Like it was a natural sub in the game.
Oh, there it is. It did it again.
Yeah, it's weird. I hear like a beeping from Skype. Here, let me just call you back.
Okay. Man, I love that ringtone.
All right, let's try it. Let's see what happens. Dang, I want to just bring this epic tale to conclusion. So anyhow, just to, I'm on Valium and steroids, and they're kind of like clashing, and it feels like every nerve on my body's on fire. And in the midst of this game that we are losing but should be winning, one of the girls scores her 100th goal. She's a senior, and like I have to sub her. Like in the flow of the game, I have to sub her out. Like my estimation as a coach is to give us a chance to win, I need to take her out right now. And one of the other players is like, oh, I think she scored her 100th goal. Like, you should really leave her in, which I don't know if that makes it. That's something that would never have made sense to me as a guy. That just wasn't a consideration as much like when I was playing. That's like definitely like very important, to girls. It's like you have to show immediate appreciation, when something like that happens. And the idea of subbing in general was kind of foreign to them because that's not something that happens as much. And I just remember like being like her saying like, I think you should leave her in because she scored her 100th goal. I'm like I definitely yelled. I'm like, I don't care because I didn't, and I yelled at, and everybody on the sidelines heard, and I'm just like, oh fuck, what did I do? Oh no. And I think that was the moment they're like, all right, like he's evil. We need to expel him from our group permanently. And so it gets to the point where like they did try to get me fired 100%, just like the coach before them, by making up some shit that did not happen. Because despite being like really irritable and and probably not performing up to my duty, I still did a pretty decent job as coach. And I mean, like one of the things they made up was they told the athletic director that I'd forced some of them to sleep in a garage during spring break.
That just doesn't sound realistic at all.
So just to get, and this is just to kind of, that was probably the best example, and that was the one where like the athletic director's like, we kind of want to get rid of him now, but I think we fucked up. That was one of the main things that they were basing my potential firing off of. And I just brought in pictures of the place. They told me that they'd forced me to sleep forced them to sleep in a garage, and the athletic, okay, so just to I guess set the tone is they do these end of the year reviews where the athletes get to review the coach, and they were just negative. They trashed me, and there were complaints like that were lodged. Yeah. And at this point, like I kind of had like a whole new. Before this happened, and it was actually right after that game. I thank God I had this moment of clarity because I was sort of so low. I couldn't think. Like I thought my mind was literally gone, and my intelligence was shot to the point where I'd just never be the same again. And I'd had this continual this continual image of, you know, that like samurai falling on their sword. What's that called? Seppuku.
I thought it was Harikari, but
That might be harikari. I can't remember. Um, but like every time I like in my mind I fucked up, I had this visual of just having a samurai sword and just plunging it in my stomach. Um, and I definitely, and at that point also the pain was so bad and I couldn't think, and I was like, I'm gonna, you know, I had started to come up with like just a pretty effective suicide plan. So if I had to bring everything to a close, I'm like, just so if I get to the point where I can't stand all this anymore, then I have a way to just you know turn the lights off, and at least in that way take control of what's going on. And just thank God after the Vicodin, or not the Vicodin, the steroids and Valium combo, I had this moment of clarity. I'm like, oh, like it's the drugs. Like I can't think because of the drugs. Like I'm in a lot of pain, but that's what's fucking my mind up. Because I would never have had that out, you know, yelled about. I don't give a shit about this kid's 100th goal under normal circumstances, and even regardless of how bad the pain was. And I just went absolute cold turkey on everything, which was a terrible idea.
I bet that felt tremendous.
Oh, it was horrific. And the thing is, I coached the next game, and it was the last game of our season, just without you know, under the influence of nothing. And every time I had to yell, it felt like someone was just stabbing an ice pick into the back of my head. And I was actually happy because I'm like, oh, I feel like I can think at least. Like, wow, this is excruciating pain. You know, every time, you know, I'm seeing like these like white flashes. Sometimes it's hard to focus my vision, but like I can think. This is fucking awesome.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I made it through, and you know, they definitely, you know, they were trying to fire me. There were multiple false claims. The chief one among them that I'd forced them to sleep in a garage over spring break on a spring break trip, and that was somehow, I don't know how. I think it was because I just did not give a fuck anymore. In my mind, I'm like, well, I've just been contemplating suicide, and now I've decided that I'm going to live, and I honestly don't care about coaching anymore. I'd kind of decided that I was just gonna go and just try to work on my health. And then once all these allegations came out, I'm stubborn enough where I was like, fuck this. No. I'm going to leave, but it's not going to be with all you assholes smearing my name for things I didn't do. If you want to fire me for stuff that I did do, like being irritable and grouchy, like go ahead, because that all happened. And I told them, I mean, I said it much more diplomatically, but like somehow I go into this performance review. Oh, we keep losing connection. Yeah.
Yep.
That time it just said lost connection. That's weird. God damn it. We might have to make this a two-parter.
Oh, good grief. There we go.
So basically what I was saying is like I went into this performance review just not caring and being like, you know what? Like I'm going to defend the things that are true, or I'm going to defend the things that are false and just admit to the things that are true. And I don't care. I don't even want to keep this job now. I just don't want my name smeared for bullshit like this. So I go into this interview, and that was one of the things I was almost laughing at, you know, when they brought this up. They're like, yeah, you know, and they said you forced them to sleep in this garage, and I was like, that's kind of funny. I mean, I think once upon a time it was a garage. I mean, what I actually did was I booked them a 6,000 square foot mansion on this lake in North Carolina, and this room that once was a garage had been converted into a finished room. It had a big screen TV. Here's the pictures of it. You know, this is a $4,000 pull-out couch. There were beds. It was heated. There was a 55-inch flat panel television. I mean, I thought it was the best room in the house. I actually would have happily stayed there the whole time. I just wanted to make sure I had a dedicated bathroom as a male coach to keep things professional. And I actually did give them the girl staying in there the master suite the last night when I was like, you know what, I'm just not gonna have to use the bathroom. So I actually did stay in there myself for the last day of the trip. And like I'm like, do you want to fire me for that? And they just had this like we fucked up look on their face.
That's hilarious.
So I didn't.
That was your little how about them apples moment.
Yeah, and it's weird though. So as soon as it was weird, and then they didn't fire me, and I was like, oh, I guess I'd do this for one more year and see if I can somehow miraculously turn this around. And it was weird. That was like a big stepping off point for me. I mean, I decided I don't ever want to put my healthcare fully in the hands of a doctor. And my perspective on doctors changed. I looked at them as the people who were supposed to fix me originally, and I started looking at them as sort of like tools that you have to use. You know, like maybe you can't cut a piece of wood with your bare hands, so you get a circular saw, and that's the perfect tool, right? But you have to make sure you know what you're using it for and how it's supposed to be used, and not let it just run rampant, or you're going to destroy that wood, right?
Yeah.
So like, I would start asking doctors questions. I went back to the pain management doctor for one last time, and I'm in so much pain still, lying on the floor, just because it was difficult to stand. And she's like, I think I want to try using a spinal stimulator. And basically what they do is they run a cable through your spine, the length of your spine, and they actually embed this it's basically like they're putting a TENS unit into your spine and they're embedding the controller in your flesh. That's the best way to describe it. And I'm just like,
sounds terrible.
Yeah. And had I not gone through all that shit, I would have just been like, okay, if you think it's going to help. And she's saying that, I'm like, why? And she's like, well, typically in our patients, and I wouldn't even let her finish the sentence. I was like, I don't care about typically in your patients. Why in my case will that help? She's like, well, we've seen that it's helped our patients. No. Why is it going to help me? And I just kept hammering at her. I'm like, medically, in my specific instance, what do you think is going to happen physiologically where this fixes the problem? And she had no answer. And I'm like, you're going to stick something into my spine with no medical idea of what was actually going to happen, just hoping that something was going to get fixed. And then she wouldn't even answer, like look me in the face. And I was like, yeah, I think we're done here. So I never went back. And that was sort of when I realized, like, all these drugs, all these treatments, they don't actually fix anything, right?
Yeah.
Pain drugs, they have their place directly after a surgery, because if your body is tense and under stress, you can't heal as effectively. But as soon as that initial healing phase is over, they're counterproductive, because something might be wrong and you can't feel it. Same with injections. With steroid injections, they don't fix anything. You just can't feel it. Same with muscle relaxants. Yeah, your muscles will temporarily relax, but whatever the thing that was causing your muscles to be tight, it's still there. Didn't get any better. And that's kind of like our whole medical system. And I had this sort of epiphany of like, wow, I need to take control of my own care. Yeah, I will let a doctor do a procedure, but not until I absolutely grill them where I understand exactly what's happening and their reasoning, and they can logically explain it to me and it makes sense. And I also have to do a ton of research. And that's when I first started reading medical studies and learning how to read medical studies. And because I never wanted to put my care in fully in a doctor's hands the way I had in the past. So since then, I changed things around. I definitely, even despite pain, I just learned how to. I did a lot of meditating that last season. I mentally prepared myself for kids being obnoxious and kind of, for lack of a better term, bitchy, and just be like, I'm just going to react calmly to that. Kind of like a Zen sort of way of just interacting with the world. And I slowly did start to get better. And somehow, that was the most successful season that team had in a long time. We beat a nationally ranked opponent for, I think they said it was the second time in the program's 23-year history that ever happened. Kind of turned things around. There was still some bitching and complaining. Like, there's still some... I think towards the end of the season, the kid goes into an athletic director, and it wasn't. And I was like, that's great though. They went into the athletic director because they thought I should have done something different with the offense of the team. They wanted me to run a different play, basically, and they were complaining to the athletic director, and it wasn't because they were making up bullshit that I didn't do. And then at that point, my contract was up for renewal, and they just opted to not renew. Which I'm like, that's fine, whatever. And there's actually a contingent of the kids on the team that go in and are like, why are you why are you not bringing back our coach? Like, we want him back. I'm like, what the fuck? This is such a weird reversal of just even a year ago. But at that point, they just didn't want to bring me back. I was cool with it. I mean, I had basically told them the year before that I would be happy to come back one more year and try to write the program and not leave them another disaster for another coach to try to clean up. But that was probably going to be it. And so I kind of stuck for that. And then since then, I've just been out in Denver trying different things, trying to keep an open mind about medicine and trying to find something that would kind of get at the root cause of whatever is happening to me, not just taking doctors' words and, taking medication that's not going to fix anything. And man, it's been hard. Even with that knowledge and doing tons of research, I've hit lots of dead ends. I've done lots of weird treatments that didn't work, but it just at least feels good to exercise a certain aspect of control over what's been going on.
Yeah, I get that feeling.
That's my long, sort of twisted story.
That was quite the long tale.
Yeah, just laid it all out there.
Dude, if people are still listening at this point, you're the real one. You need to let us know.
Yeah, this is
easily the longest podcast.
Holy shit! I probably, in hindsight, if I was a better podcaster, I would not have gone into this story. I didn't think it was going to take that long. I mean, I got like a placebo emotion effect. Like, I got like emotional and worked up listening to your story, and I was thinking about all the shit that I went through and things that I wish I had done differently, and hearing some of the things you said of like, oh, I can just push through it. Oh, I don't want to be a burden. I don't have the means or resources. I was like, yeah, I did all that same shit, and look where it landed me. Like, I don't want somebody else to have to go through that when maybe they don't have to, and I don't want you to have to go through that. And that's sort of like what brought all that up. And then I was looking for a short and concise way to tell that whole story, and I did not find it.
I'm not going to argue that. That was quite a long tale.
Yeah. I mean, can you I guess see where I was coming from?
Oh, I see where you're going. It took a while to get there, but I understood it after a while where you're going to. Like, the first 20 minutes, I was thinking, where's he going with this? And then, like, the last 20 minutes, I'm going, I fucking know where this is going. Because I remembered it kind of from other stuff you've said to us in the group chat before.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something where, dude, I'm trying to work through it. I'm trying to, I keep, every time I hit it.
Therapy.
Oh, no, I don't even mean in terms of that. I mean, in terms of, like, physically, like, the biggest thing is I still cannot sit down where it'll just flare everything up. So many just normal things. I mean, going out and seeing a movie can be difficult because I have to find the exact right theater that has the reclining chairs. Going out to dinner is a real issue because it's after about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to start to get like muscle spasms and my head lock up. I mean, forget dating. I tried to do that a little bit and it just wasn't real productive. So it's like fucked my life up a little bit. And it's frustrating. Like I feel like I put all this hard work into becoming a better human being. I mean, and because that was really the way I looked at it. That last season, I was like, you know what? This is a lot of this, the players being difficult and, irrational, asking for things that are impossible. Sure. But you know what? Let me look at the things that they're saying that I think are valid and the things that I can improve in terms of the way I relate to them as athletes and people and specifically women, because that's just a different way you have to relate. I think as a male, especially as a male coach to a female player, different way you have to phrase things, different approach you have to look at. I mean, a lot of it was more important about how they perceive things and how they emotionally felt about something than what actually happened. Does that sound weird to you?
No,
it probably does.
I kind of get it.
That's that's a whole nother can of worms, but it's just like
we
yeah.
Can't go open it anymore.
No, I don't want to. That's why I'm pulling myself back. But basically, what I'm saying is like I feel like I grew as a person a lot. I learned a lot. I got my master's degree. I felt like maybe after that year was the first time I was really ready for like high level management. Have a master's in management. I'm like, you know what? Can't do any of that because I can't sit in a chair. But I can be real active, and as long as if I'm moving and I'm not staying still, it's not quite as bad.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. If you have any, I kept trying to pause and give you opportunities to ask questions or interject, but I feel like you're just like fuck it, like let them go. We got to get through this.
I was just gonna let you run with it.
That's
None of my advice will be very helpful.
that's the end of my tale. I mean, if anyone actually did listen to the end of this and they've got questions about the weird treatments they've tried or what hasn't worked or did work or what I'm like, wow, God, good Lord, I wish I hadn't done that. I'd be happy to, I guess, answer that at another time. But
Slide in his DMs. Plug your Instagram now so they know where to slide in.
no, I could just ask you at your Q&As. You're a question master right now.
I'll answer all your medical questions for you.
But well, no, they can you can collect them and then I can try to answer them. But
Okay. We'll do it on the podcast.
wait, so what was the point where it started to make sense in terms of where I was going with it?
Dude, I don't even know. It was legitimately like the last 20, 30 minutes.
Sorry.
It was like the last 20, 30 minutes where I don't know what it was you said. It was something about one of the treatments where I'm like, wait, he's told me this before. And then I realized, he's wrapping this up full term. Like, okay, now I'm skeptical of the doctors because I remember you talking in the group chat about it before, like explaining. You've explained all this over text before. It was a little more concise. But I realized, that's the connection where he was talking about where he just stopped putting up with the shit from the doctors and just started doing anything and everything that was proven through research.
I guess the two things I was trying to get across though, and I don't know if I did. I was just trying to do it another way, and that's part of the reason why I went through the long, sort of emotional aspect of it. Was a lot of it was me being like, I can't deal with this now because I have to put, I'm in charge of this team. Like I have to put them first. I can't take time off to do this. But I mean, in hindsight, it was like it was terrible for everybody. I mean, we basically had this lost season where everyone was miserable because I was trying to just white knuckle it through something that I couldn't. Wasn't an effective coach. Almost just made the program even worse, and then I fucked myself over in the process too. And it's just like that same. I don't know. I mean, can you kind of see the parallel, like why I reacted so strongly to your?
I can definitely see the comparisons that you were making. Kind of like looking back, like, I could fix him. I could tell him what I did wrong. Help him change his path a little bit. Kind of like that ideal that you were going for.
Because I get it when you're saying that. Like I know it comes from a good place, and it comes from wanting to put others before yourself, which feels almost like noble. It almost makes you feel good about dealing with the shittiness. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna get through this, but it's gonna help other people. But eventually that runs out. Eventually you just can't. You eventually
only run the road so long.
Exactly. Yeah, and then once you can't, your ability to help them is compromised to the point where it's like you should have just taken care of yourself first, so you could have kept helping them longer and better.
Yeah, I get it.
How the fuck do we wrap this up?
Dude, I don't even know, but it's definitely time to do it. I'm about
Yeah,
hour and a half, 2 hours late on cooking Mother's Day dinner.
Oh, damn. You could have just said that. You could have... I'm sorry. I feel bad now.
I didn't want to interrupt and be rude. You listened to all of mine, so I should have listened to all of yours.
Nah. Okay. That's what I'm saying. That's a good sentiment, but it's fine, man. Sometimes stuff comes first, and you just got to cut it short. Maybe I should have. In hindsight, I shouldn't have started that. We should have made it a two-parter, and I should not have started down that long path. I thought it wasn't going to take me that long. My apologies to your mother, and
she'll get over it.
And I guess we wrap it up. This has been a surprisingly emotional podcast on Mother's Day.
No one's gonna expect this once they get into it.
I literally I don't know. I think both of us tend to being a little bit more stoic and cynical, but I think for me talking about Rose Namajunas opened up the emotional floodgates a little bit. Hearing your story got the doors wide open, and then I just went into it, and for the one person who is still listening at this point.
I have a feeling who it might be. I'm not going to spoil it, but I feel like I know the one person who might be.
it's
I
Love
don't think
MMA apparel is actually who it really is, but
we might have two. I
But-
don't think it's going to be more than two.
I hope somewhere in our long and twisting tales of emotional trauma that you found some nugget that might help you, because you know, I think in your case it was a little bit harder to avoid because it was out of your control somewhat, and in my case I think I should have 100% avoided it, and there were so many mistakes, and I just went through the whole thing because I'm like, there's so many fucking mistakes every step of the way that I made where I did not have to be in that situation, and I kept putting things off, and I just don't want anyone to ever make those same mistakes when they're so goddamn simple and so easily avoided. So I guess on this Mother's Day, I think we should just do closing thoughts and call this a fucking podcast. My closing thought is I hope for a happy life for Rose Namajunas in whatever direction she decides to take it. I wish a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and I hope that whoever did listen to this does not end up making the same mistakes that I made and has a much better middle part of their lives as a result. And I'm still optimistic for the future because as shitty as things were, I've made a lot of progress. I'm gonna keep moving forward. That's all you can do.
My closing thoughts are: you need to take care of your physical and mental health so you can better help those around you, is the lesson that I have learned so far. I also hope everyone has a great belated Mother's Day, since this will be coming out on Monday. There's no way this gets out tonight. And so happy belated Mother's Day to the probably 4 to 5 women who listen to this podcast. And have a good week.
Peace out.